Still wake up.
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy.
Come on, let's wake up.
Gotta wake up.
Are you sure you want to wake up to this?
Come on now, wake up.
I can't wait to wake up.
Wake up, idiot.
All right, yeah, thanks for waking up with us on this Monday. It's a wake-up call. KB and Andy. He's Kevin Bowen. I'm Andy Sweeney. Marc Dykton producing today's effort. Hanging out with you on the Fan here in Indianapolis. As always, broadcasting live from the DriveHubler.com studios. Gregg Doyel will join us coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. A ton of football. Pascal Siakam, the Pacers, and the road trip at 2-4, and much more to talk about here on this fine Monday. KB, good morning to you. How's everything going? How's the weekend, big guy?
Good morning. Yeah, weekend was good. Commute in on this Monday morning was a breeze. We haven't said that too often here over the past week or so.
It's going to be
no
like
issues.
it's gonna be like 40, 50 degrees this week.
Yeah,
How about that?
Yeah,
Get this
we're gonna
snow
go
outta
shorts.
here.
We're gonna go shorts later this week. We might need the sunscreen later this week, but yeah, weekend was fun. Went to the Golf Expo on Saturday morning. That was a nice time. Stopped over at Hinkle Fieldhouse Saturday afternoon for their game. I love the 4 o'clock tips there. You get a little sun coming in the windows there for the first half.
Yeah, sure you do.
Nighttime as it reached kind of the latter parts of that game. So fun time with the family there. And we just watched a lot of football then after that.
Yeah, that's what we were talking before the show, and Marc went to Disney on Ice, and then he's like, and after that, I just watched football all weekend, and that's what I did. I just watched football all weekend.
And
Friday night was the fatherly duties. Friday night was, okay, kids, this is for you. Let's see Disney. Let's do all the characters. And then Saturday, Sunday, I'm like, okay.
And now you need to reward Dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to say that I did bring in my beer for Marc Dykton today.
The bet has been paid.
It only took about a week and a half, but I
So
have
Marc
repaid
took
my
to
bet.
social media to
Well, he
kind of
did.
take a jab.
He
The
did,
Texans,
yeah.
The Texans
Man.
were in the playoffs and out of the playoffs before I got my beer for them making the playoffs.
They were out of the playoffs. Thank God the Texans. That is the game that I said, if one game might get away, it might be that the punt fest that Houston went through over the weekend. You know my thoughts on that. If you're a Colts fan, you know, it's okay watching the Texans move out of the playoffs and let the big boys through. That's what we got now.
It is a bit concerning, though, that C.J. Stroud looks like a dude, though.
Oh
yeah.
Without
Well,
question.
he
Yeah,
looks like a dude.
We
so.
talked about it last night or last week. You know, the thing about Houston, too, it's not just Stroud. It's like those premium positions, they could pretty much check the box at all of them. Now moving forward, certainly a much better entertainment level from the divisional round games than we got in the wild card. I have not been one that has said this in the past, but I'm here, and I don't know if it's the Kelsey involvement. I don't know if it's Taylor Swift, but I'm just tired of the Chiefs.
Okay, you know what? We might need to stop the show, and I might need to give you a hug. I might need to give you a hug
and
right
I
now.
have nothing against Patrick Mahomes.
There we go.
I have very little against Andy Reid, and honestly, probably 90-some% of that comment is just strictly jealousy.
Oh, it's 100% jealousy.
But I'm just tired of him. And I don't know, maybe it's Maddie kind of rubbing off on me because she's like looking at me like, gosh, are they really going to win this again? And sure enough, with the Bills kind of on the brink of it, and that drive was, I thought, going so well there at the end. They were eating up clock. They were kind of methodically moving it. I'm like, this is going to work out. I mean, when the 2-minute warning happens, I don't know about you guys, I'm like, the Bills are going to win this football game. And then all of a sudden that drive stalls, and as soon as Bass walked out there to kick the field goal, even if he makes it, you just know Mahomes is going to somehow
it's way too much time.
get into Harrison Butker field goal range, and I feel like Butker makes every meaningful kick that matters there. So that was my lone bummer. If there was a lone bummer, well, I guess outside of the Pacers dropping both, I would say it happened about 9.
That was a bummer.
9 o'clock last night or whenever that game ended, of as soon as 3rd and 9 fell incomplete, I was like, oh, boy.
I thought it was flipping the Bills' way when Pacheco dropped it in the end zone, and they got so lucky that Pacheco had that turnover in the end zone.
Hardman.
More Hardman. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I was like, oh, the Bills might do it. The luck is turning their way after that boneheaded decision to do a fake punt and everything, and then it just,
So what's so funny is I text Kevin this morning, and I go, at 7, but we can do some of it now. I go, at 7:30, I have 2 things as a jumping off point if we want to talk NFL. I never would have thought, because I thought my bit here, I thought my personality here, guys, would be that I would be the curmudgeon towards some of these teams. And I thought KB would roll in and say, Andy, don't be the mean and nasty guy on the Lord's Day when you're watching some NFL, and then on this Monday. Life is too short. I thought you would scold me that life is too short.
No, I'm all in on the Ravens Sunday.
I'm tired of 2 things, okay? I'm tired, and I already am going to have to worry about this, okay? I don't dislike the Kelceys. In fact, everything around me should like the Kelceys. They're hanging out with beautiful women. The fat one can tear his shirt off, and he's really not that fat, but he's
calling
former.
him fat. I'm
well,
a little nervous
now he's
what you would call us.
Now he's a former, well, people call me, you know what they call me, a former offensive lineman, but he can take his shirt off and do a shot out of a bowling ball at a tailgate before the game, and inevitably, those guys are going to build. Like, we haven't even started the Kelce media bonanza. They're going to start, they already have a podcast, and there's rumors that they're going to do a game watch along like the Manning brothers do, and I'm already tired of the Kelce brothers, and we haven't even started their media mogul reign, if you will. And then number two, I'm done with the Buffalo Bills. I'm done with Bills Mafia.
Well, you don't have to see him again until September. Good news.
I'm finished with them. I tried to ride hard with the Bills this year. That this was the year, and they had injuries, and it's Josh Allen, and he's a maniac, and the Chiefs aren't as good, and all these different things. And I'm done with them. And the Bills Mafia, drinking with Jason Kelce. That's fun until his brother beats you and scores 2 touchdowns. And, of course, Kansas City does what Kansas City does, and that is they win. You got to give them credit, but I'm so tired of seeing them win. I'm with you.
Fighting Dan Campbell's will be a touchdown underdog coming up Sunday in San Francisco. Obviously, the Deebo Samuel injury will be a huge storyline all week long, and it will be Baltimore. So both the 1 seeds hosting here in their respective title games. It'll be Baltimore with a huge second half. They are a slight favorite. So once again, if you would like, you're going to get Mahomes in points on the road. They are a slight early favorite
Boy, that
here
defense.
as we get ready for the AFC title game. The top 2 scoring defense, I believe, in the league, Baltimore and Kansas City, coming up on Sunday. That is the first game, by the way. I might have misspoke there. That is the first game, 3 o'clock on Sunday. Second game will be that 49ers and Lions game.
What's the juiciest Super Bowl matchup for you guys with the 4 teams left?
I think I was thinking about this on the drive-in. You could talk yourself, I think, into several of them. You know, certainly any sort of sentimental value involves the Lions. I mean, that is the obvious one. They're the only team left that hasn't won a Super Bowl. You know, that one kind of speaks for itself. You know, I mean, since probably Halloween, maybe even earlier than that, Baltimore and San Francisco have been the 2 best teams in the league. So it's kind of like, we don't always get that 1 seed versus 1 seed.
That's the story of the postseason.
Angle to it. So I could actually talk myself into several, but again, heart over anything else right now. I am all in on the Lions.
I feel like we could see a David Goliath where it's Lions versus Chiefs. The underdog against the team that's been there like seemingly every year for the last 6 years.
One thing I do love about the Lions story this year, among other things, is like, they were the preseason darling. I mean, everybody said after their end of last season,
lived up to
they
it.
beat Green Bay in the season finale. It was, here come the Lions. They're going to win the NFC North. And how many times do you see the preseason darling just fail?
Oh, all the
not,
time. Yeah,
not be one of the last 4 standing.
Sure.
So, it is, and that was a pretty entertaining game. That had some, talk about Campbell going for it on 4th and goal there from that was a long Was it 2 yards? I was like looking at it. I'm like, wait a minute. Don't you want to kick a field goal here late in the 3rd quarter? And they just run it right at the gut, right at Vita Vea. Campbell doing Campbell things.
Well, that's not the story. That's not the story of that. You're missing the story. So if you don't know, the Lions went for it on 4th down. On 1st down, they ran the ball. This is towards the end of the game. Chris Collinsworth on CBS goes, this is what Dan Campbell's going to do. Nothing cute. He and Ben Johnson are going to run the ball up the middle, and then they broke huddle with 5 wide receivers, and they spread the ball, and they passed on 2nd down, KB, and 3rd down, and then they ran Craig Reynolds up the middle. Now, you may want, and Andy, why do you care that they ran Craig Reynolds up the middle? Well, the top prop bet in that game
Did you have Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery?
Was David Montgomery anytime touchdown at -150.
I know, I looked up and I was like,
everybody had in their parlays.
Who is number 13? Is that a backup quarterback? Is that Teddy Bridgewater
Goodness.
in the backfield?
So Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Niners, we'll dive into that. Your early thoughts, 2-4 on the road trip. That damn Portland game is sticking in my craw, if you will, with the Pacers over the weekend. 2 games with Pascal Siakam. Any thoughts, I guess, here early on this Monday morning?
Again, individually, I thought Siakam had some really, really nice moments, especially as a creator. And yesterday, you really needed him to do more than just score. He didn't, what do you have, 15 or 16, I think it was, last night. But he did have a big assist number, which was, again, needed.
Yeah,
without
7 assists.
Haliburton. I don't know if you guys saw Haliburton's jacket. It looked like he was a contestant on Double Dare, if we have to continue down our wild and crazy kids comment from Friday.
Did you see his dad in Sacramento?
I love
the
that.
The Pacers put all the stuff on social media.
He was mic'd up.
His dad's waving to the crowd. I'm like, man, that's bold. Someone's gonna chirp back at Haliburton's dad.
God bless John Haliburton. I guess I could go a lot of different directions, though, Andy. I think you're at a point now in the second half of the season where I don't know if feel-good nature is the right way to describe it. Like, the Pacers need to win some games. I mean, if you look at the Eastern Conference right now, Andy, if the playoffs started today, they'd be in the play-in game against the Magic.
Yeah, they'd be a 7 seed.
We've seen what the Magic have done to them. And remember, you don't have your first-round pick. So, like, when you make a trade like this, expectations now all of a sudden skyrocket here and now. Like, you've got to get in the playoffs this year because you don't have, that pick coming up here this summer. Again, big wings continue to dominate. I mean, Jeremy Grant on Friday night, one of the best nights of his season. He did that to you earlier in the year. The fact he got swept by Portland is just such a low point. And then last night, without Haliburton, of course, you feel like you're playing with a little bit of house money. And you had moments. I mean, you had a lead, just a 1-point lead with 3 minutes to go. Obviously, the Suns' big three, they make the plays down the stretch. I will say, exiting last night, when I saw Haliburton was out, I was a bit puzzled. For those that watched Friday night, again, Haliburton made his return. That was on the very early end of what Adrian Wojnarowski originally reported as the approximate 2-week reevaluation. That was more like 10 days. And it's not like 10 days and he was reevaluated, Andy. It was 10 days and he's back playing. And he had a really nice game on Friday night. But for anybody that watched it, he clearly was favoring whether that is the hamstring or whatever. He was favoring something. And then it's not a back-to-back on Sunday, but he doesn't play. So it's just a little bit of a concern I have moving forward of, is this going to linger at all? We know hamstrings can be tricky. I don't think we're there yet, but, I brought up originally when the injury occurred, Andy. Remember there's that 65-game threshold to be on the All-NBA teams, and he's got, I think it's 6 games to play with the rest of the season. In trying to make that 65-game threshold, which would increase his contract to $260-some million, assuming he'd be an All-NBAer, which I think he will. So I think you could go in a lot of different directions with the Pacers, but certainly bummed in Friday night more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just you got to win that Portland game. Imagine if they leave that Portland game 3-3. Right? If they win that game and if they lose last night, and it was a close game, another valiant effort, another game where a guy like Jarris Walker, who I think absolutely can be part of your rotation, to me, it's one of those things. On Friday, we sat in here, and didn't you feel really good about the Pacers? Coming off that, I mean, who they beat? They came off that win with Sacramento. Yeah. All of the Pascal Siakam is going to be here. All of the, hey, Haliburton, this injury is clearing up. And then you think, okay, we're full strength, if you will, against Portland. Lost to Portland earlier this season. Let's take care of this and at least go 500, knowing that Phoenix last night was going to be difficult. When they're playing, when Booker's there and Beal's there, my man Eric Gordon's still firing threes. Still just firing threes. Eric Gordon, good God, how much money has he made in the NBA? Central. Yes, he is. And then, Durant has 40. To me, I'm interested, and even after the game, hopefully we get to speak with Carlisle tomorrow, how Rick Carlisle's going to use Pascal Siakam. What creative things on both ends of the floor do they come up with?
Late in the game.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think that's more to match up, I believe, with Phoenix because Nurkic was in foul trouble for them.
Because they can go small and they can bring in all their offensive
Turner was on
weapons.
The bench late in that one.
Yeah, I mean, you can play him at the 5. He guarded Devin Booker at times, guarded Kevin Durant, obviously, at times. So how they kind of figure him out, I'm interested. But I think you're right. The overall narrative is, okay, you survived the road trip. You got Pascal Siakam. Haliburton is some stage of getting there, being healthy. And now you come home. Denver, Philly, Phoenix, Memphis. No, it's a massive week. They have to get going. Like, to me, I'm with you. This is now a week. You're back home. It's going to be wild in Gamebridge. You're going to have Siakam with the home debut. Let's get going. Let's go win basketball games.
So, again, Denver tomorrow night, Andy.
Philly on Thursday.
No back-to-back for Denver. Then you got Philly on Thursday. No back-to-back for Philly. You have a back-to-back Friday with Phoenix. It's the second game with Phoenix in, 6 days or 5 days. And Phoenix is not on a back-to-back while you are. So, yes, you're back at home, but, boy, these are 3 very formidable teams that you're playing here, and none of them are on a back-to-back in any of these games. So, very important when you look at it's still very jumbled in the East. I mean, the Pacers are, a game out from being the 6th seed. But this is an important time where you need to build a little cushion head into the All-Star break. And, trade deadline-wise, it's, 2.5 weeks away. And for anybody that watched the game last night, Buddy Hield absolutely, again, roasted on the defensive end of the floor. Is that something that you look to, expiring contracts? You brought up Jarris Walker. I mean, he got in the game before Obi Toppin.
Yes, he did.
That was something that caught my eye. And I thought Ben Sheppard, I know it might not show up in the box score as much. I thought Sheppard gave them some decent minutes last night. So if there is certainly a positive, I think, exiting a loss to Phoenix, it was that both rookies, who haven't really played consistent roles at all this season, of course, both of them showed out. Certainly we will get to Purdue and Indiana as well from the weekend. For the Boilermakers, it was one of the finer weeks you're going to have to win 2 Big Ten road games, by double digits. And again, I've said it with Haliburton now for several months. I will continue to say it with Zach Edey. Just do not take the numbers for granted. It's stupid video game-like what Edey continues to do, and he did it not only in Bloomington, of course, last Tuesday, but in Iowa City on Saturday as well. Purdue's got Michigan coming up tomorrow night. Nothing for Indiana until Saturday. That's probably a good thing for all parties involved.
Thank goodness.
After the 20th straight loss
Thank goodness
occurred.
there's not a Tuesday game against somebody that we have to talk about.
In
CJ
Madison.
Gunn getting kicked out of the game. We'll play the Don Fischer sound. He's embarrassed for the team. What a mess in Bloomington.
Gregg Doyel at 8 o'clock. Good Monday morning to you. Again, the commute in far different than what we had to deal with yesterday. It was a breeze. Thank you for starting the week with us. I'm Kevin Bowen. He's Andy Sweeney. Marc Dykton on the 1s and 2s. Thanks for tuning in to the Wake Up Call right here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Query and Company. Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, so let's start last night in Phoenix. Pacers fall to the Suns 117-110. That's your final. Pacers now 24-19 on the year, 2-4 on this road trip. Obviously, one of the big conversation pieces, Pascal Siakam, 15.7 rebounds, 4 assists last night. Rick Carlisle postgame talking about the new player, kind of things they're going to be able to do with Siakam now finally with the team.
He's a very resourceful, adaptable player. I can see that we'll be able to put him on a lot of different guys, a lot of different positions. You know, he started on Booker in this game, ended up moving to Durant and to other guys. You know, offensively, we've got to get him more acquainted with some of the stuff we're doing, and we're going to have to add some new stuff that's, makes sense for his special abilities. Studying that stuff now, but there's everything to like about him, really.
Yeah, Kevin Durant, 40 points in the win for Phoenix. Up next for the Pacers, hosting the Nuggets. That's tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. You can hear it right here on the Fan.
Yeah, and really from the weekend, Friday was the big dud. When Haliburton and Siakam both played to lose to the Trailblazers, swept by a team that is, 12 wins on the year? I think that's right, for Portland. Very disappointing on that end. We did not see Haliburton last night. Injury maintenance is what Rick Carlisle called it, coming off that hamstring injury. So certainly something to keep an eye on. It is a big, big week for the Pacers homestand that includes Denver, Philly, and again, Phoenix coming up on Friday. All right, from this past weekend, the divisional round of the playoffs, we saw home teams take care of business in 3 of the 4. Boy, how about that Packers finish? I mean, I know Marc Dykton had to be thrilled by the Jordan Love, Brett Favre reenactment there. But that was a game that if you're a 49ers fan for moments there, not only do you lose Deebo Samuel, but hell, Andy, I mean, you're down late in that game. I mean, they had to come up with a big drive. They get it done, though. So coming up on Sunday in the NFC Championship, that will be the second game. 49ers as a touchdown favorite over the Fighting Dan Campbells. And then at 3 o'clock from Baltimore, it will be the Ravens as a slight favorite over the Kansas City Chiefs. 6th straight year for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the AFC title.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, 6 straight years in the conference championship game is ridiculous.
In a league defined by parity.
And this team is not. I mean, this is easily the worst team that they have had. I mean, I know the defense is good.
I actually
but
thought their
offensively,
wideouts made a few plays yesterday.
Well, they sacked Kadarius Toney. I know he was injured. Well, convenient injury. I mean, they benched Kadarius Toney. In this game, going into this game, it's unbelievable.
For good reason.
For them.
On that
good for them. 2 touchdowns. Kelsey's doing his thing. Do you see the reports that Kelsey, they're thinking he may retire at the end of the year? Do you see that?
Well, at one point, Romo dropped brother-in-law for Jason Kelsey in the suite there.
I think that's like the second or third time he keeps saying that they're married.
I know. Someone's probably got to get
Tony
him.
Romo not being good at his job is not breaking news, though.
No, that was a game that
Romo
you get the
stinks.
5 lead changes through the first 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden the fourth quarter is just kind of this, I don't know if dud of an ending is too harsh, because you did have some very entertaining plays, from the fumble through the end zone, the fake punt. How about the one Buffalo fumble that they got back on there? I mean, if they come back and win that game, Dalton Kincaid and Spencer Brown maybe recovered that fumble. But it ends late with the missed field goal by Tyler Bass, and really I just think that Buffalo drive stalling out and not getting into the end zone was the difference in that one. All right, heading back to college basketball over the weekend. Let's start with Friday night. 91-79 loss for the Indiana Hoosiers to Wisconsin. No Khalil Ware in that game. First half, extremely ugly for the Hoosiers. That is now 20 straight losses in Madison. CJ Gunn gets the heave-ho. I did see Indiana leads college basketball in flagrant fouls this year, so maybe next to the 87 banner or next to a Big Ten title banner. I think there's a couple of those up there. You could put that at the end of the year.
What do you want to do about Indiana the rest of the year, KB? I'm asking. What do you want to do?
I saw the women got a big win in Mackey yesterday.
I'm just wondering,
they have
what
Purdue's
do we do?
number, it sounds like.
There you
Moore's
go.
bunch.
What do we do with Indiana the rest of the season? Because it's obviously over, right? Like there's no magical run to this. It's just going to fizzle out. This is the way it's going to be, and we're going to have to talk about it. Indiana losers. What? Purdue 84-70. Then you were in the house. Where were you seated for Butler? Big win by 14.
2-17s, yeah. Section
Okay,
217 for the Dogs. Good win there over DePaul. Just needed. DePaul's terrible. You can't afford to lose that one. Butler's got Nova coming up. They're doing a checkered out.
No,
Coming
are
up on
they?
Saturday afternoon. We might have Thad Mott on later the week. We might have a pair of tickets.
Is that
to give away
is that
two.
by section or is that by person?
Yeah.
It's by section, right?
By section there. So, again, Butler needs to string a few together against some quality opponents to get back in that bubble conversation there. I do want to go back to Purdue. I mean, 84-70 over Iowa. First off, they built that lead early in the game with Edey on the bench. I'm always curious about those minutes for Purdue of, okay, when Edey's in foul trouble, how do you kind of handle that? But Zach Edey finishes Saturday afternoon with 30 and 18. Andy Sweeney, his last 3 games, 93 points, 54 rebounds.
That's pretty good, man. That's
Averages
pretty stinking
of
good.
31 and 18 for Zach Edey. And again, road teams in the Big Ten. I know that Indiana is near one of the bottom teams in the Big Ten. Iowa's not horrific by any means, though. And they just win 2 big. I mean, how often do you hear from Big Ten coaches how hard it is to win on the road? And that
that's
on
all
the road.
you hear, right?
Purdue gets 2 road wins, one by 21 and the other one by 14.
I'm just stunned that Iowa only scored 70 points. Only hit 5 threes in the game. That's not very Iowa of them, right?
And Fran behaved, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, and I don't like that either. I didn't see, obviously, the entire game, but Fran didn't get a technical, did he? I mean, what are we doing? Come on. He's got to get angry. How you lose by double figures and at least not get one technical on the way? Come on.
Purdue is going to peacock it up tomorrow night. That is a 9 o'clock tip at home against, they got to be the worst team in the Big Ten, right? Michigan. And the kid's not allowed to play in road games. Is that right?
Yeah. Is Doug McDonald? Is that who it was? Yeah, not allowed to play in those games.
McDonald, something like that.
What if he was allowed to play on Peacock exclusive games?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like the only road game he can play are the ones that matter. Purdue on Peacock. That's the one. Put him in the game.
Butler at Georgetown tomorrow at 6:30. Again, nothing for Indiana coming up till Illinois on Saturday.
Yeah, just quickly, Eagles firing their DC. Was it Sean Desai? Is that how you say it? And then your boy, Mark Dykton, as a new offensive coordinator. Looks like Shane Waldron spent the last 3 years there with the Seattle Seahawks. Going to be your guy now.
That's
Going to be
all right.
your OC going into the future. And by future, I mean 1 year until Eberflus and the staff are fired there.
I know. And then we do this charade all over
And then they
again.
get to do the exact same thing next year.
I mean, he revamped Geno Smith's career. He brought that back from the dead. So
there
we'll
you
see if he
go.
does that
So
for
no
Justin
Cliff
Fields or if he
Kingsbury.
goes to Caleb Williams or something. What?
No Cliff Kingsbury.
No, maybe. I don't know.
He's too attractive.
That could very well be
Right.
it.
Yeah,
You are
he's-
too handsome,
He
sir.
just got in the building. They thought, you know what, Cliff? I hate to do it. It's too much.
Yeah, the ladies
Too
of
mu-
Lincoln Park
too
would
much
be
sexiness.
fawning over you. And again, IU women 74-68 over Purdue yesterday in Mackey. No Sidney Parrish for that one, but the Hoosiers 15 3-pointers. They continue their dominance over Purdue. That is 10 straight wins for Terry Morin's bunch over the Boilermakers. All right, on the other side, we do have some Don Fischer audio from Friday night that we will play, but also on the Colts front today. I think it's time to start looking at some mock drafts, and I think the early looks at them would have Chris Ballard nodding, not something you typically say. We'll explain more on that in the Pascal Siakam debuts. 2 games for him. How'd he look? Where's the fit? Big week for the Pacers upcoming. His home debut tomorrow night. We'll touch on all of that. Gregg Doyel joins us at 8 o'clock.
Coming up Monday on
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Yeah, on this Monday, appreciate you guys hanging out with us in the DriveHubler.com studios. KB and Andy, Wake Up Call. Reminder, Gregg Doyel going to join us coming up at 8 o'clock. We'll talk a litany of items to him. Obviously, all the NFL from the weekend. We're talking about Pacers in action, that 2-4 road trip, Pascal Siakam and everything else. Don Fischer frustrated with this team. We'll dive into all of that as we go today. Okay, so you kind of, Kevin Bowen, I won't say stole the thunder, but you're tired of the Kansas City Chiefs, okay?
I'm newly tired of them.
I've been tired of them, but you're tired of them. Kelsey goes into the crowd. He is now going to be the drunk guy with no shirt on. That is going to be his calling card. And while I should like that, there's part of me that's tired of it. I'm done with it. The other thing from the weekend, and both of you are going to disagree with this. I want to be clear. Kevin, you've already said it, and so I know you're going to disagree. And even looking at Marc Dykton's Twitter feed yesterday, he is going to disagree with that. But I am going to, and I guess part of me is like fine with the Lions if they make the Super Bowl. It is a fun story, and it's somebody different, and Dan Campbell was kind of the football meathead that everyone made fun of when they made that hire. But here is what I'm tired of, and I think there'll be some Colts fans around here. I mean, obviously, Indiana, if you're an IU basketball fan, it's 1987 since you last won a national title. I don't need to even get into that on the Purdue side. But now I'm being told how much I have to love the Detroit Lions fan base. Oh, they've been through so much. Oh, you got to feel great for this old man who's in attendance for the Detroit Lions. So my weekend, while I enjoyed the NFL, I was old and crotchety as it pertains to the Kelsey brothers and how they're just now going to take over my TV screen for the next 20 years, shirtless, one of them married to Taylor Swift, the other an offensive lineman. And now I have to like the Detroit fan base. It's like, well, no, I want a Super Bowl. I'm a very selfish person.
Well,
you're not an IU fan, it's been 1987.
But the New York Giants couldn't be more of a stratosphere away from the Super Bowl right now.
Well, I know that's
Giants
what I'm saying.
Either you cheer for somebody now, or you just be an old curmudgeon and sit on your couch.
There we go. Well, I guess I'm picking the second one. I hate to do it, but not to be scolded. Oh, you gotta love what the Detroit fans have been through.
But isn't that fandom? To me, that is sports fandom. I absolutely love the fact that
Marc,
here
you
they
should
are,
hate it.
getting their chance, getting their opportunity. And honestly, Marc, probably of anybody, being an NFC North fan, should be the one that, I guess, has any sort of hatred towards the Lions. The Lions have not bothered anyone in the NFL for years.
They've been through it. They've been a
their
laughing
moment.
stock. They went 0-16 at one point. They've had players retire in their prime because they wanted to get out of that organization. No, I picked with my head the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. I'm going with my heart. I want the Lions to go all the way because I feel for that franchise, that fan base. Yeah. I'm very excited for them. Couldn't be happier. Dan Campbell is a dude that I would run through a wall for if he came in here right now.
That's my problem. I like Campbell.
I do want to get into. I don't know if we'll do it today, but I've thought this a lot over the last couple of weeks. The what-if scenario with Dan Campbell. I mean, he could have been the Colts head coach. I don't know if a ton of fans kind of recall how all of that played out. Maybe we'll go over that tomorrow, but there's definitely a what-if scenario with Campbell. One thing I've always been impressed, too, with Campbell is I remember when he brought the Lions here, it probably was his first year, maybe his second year, for joint practices up at Grand Park. And the Colts had been on a little bit of a run. I think it was maybe the Browns with Freddie Kitchens and maybe even the Ravens with Harbaugh, where, the joint practices had just gotten kind of dysfunctional. They had, fights galore.
Oh, fights all the time, yeah.
And,
Freddie Kitchens.
I remember for a couple of days leading into those Lions joint practices, it was like, all right, here comes the biting kneecappers of Dan Campbell. There's going to be fights galore. And I know this might sound weird to some people, but, it was one of the more well-behaved, very, constructively productive joint sessions. And I've seen a lot of them over the years, and not many of them follow that script. And it was kind of my first impression of Campbell in person. I'm like, damn, he is the tough-looking dude, tough-sounding dude, and all of that. But it's not like he's, whatever, having a bunch of just wild maniacs out there that have no discipline whatsoever. And I think when you watch their team, you see a lot of elements to it. And every time I watch the Lions, I continue to be impressed with their level of aggressiveness. And go back to that 4th and goal call that we talked about earlier. That was 3 minutes to go in the third quarter of a tie game. You hadn't done anything on that goal line situation. I'm thinking to myself, just kick the field goal. Take the lead and, I guess trust your defense. I know Mike Evans was incredible all game long. By the way, that's a free agent wideout, Mike Evans. Be curious to see what the market looks like for him, if Michael Pittman Jr. is impacted in any way, shape, or form on that. But, yeah, the aggression from the Fighting Campbells, I love it. So you can cheer for the 49ers.
I don't want to cheer for them either. I thought the Packers choked that game away. I thought they gagged the game away. I don't believe in the Niners at all. I think the Lions, listen, I don't mind saying it. I think the Lions go in. I think the Lions win the game. I think they walk into San Francisco and win that game on Sunday. I really do. I think the Lions are going to be in the Super Bowl.
Deebo Samuel injury.
Yeah, X-rays came back
negative. Is that
negative.
a big reason why that you're going there? Because they are if you look at the stats,
it's
they
not
are
even close.
Totally
different team.
With or without him.
No, I think the Lions will get to Purdy. I think he'll have a substandard game. I think you're the Deebo Samuel injury. I mean, the Niners were lucky to get that win against Green Bay on Saturday night. They were. I mean, Green Bay's probably kicking themselves, more than kicking themselves, over how that game played out, missed field goal, how the game ended with the interception, and about 10 other plays in between. So it was quite the weekend. Baker Mayfield had a nice game. I'll ask you the same thing I did on Friday. What do you do contractually with Baker Mayfield if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
He's earned the right to come back.
No, but I'm saying, what does that look like? Is that 3 years, $100 million?
Yeah,
is it something like that? It'd be 33 and change a year?
Yeah, I think it's a couple years. I remember when Baker had that chaotic week with the Rams. Like, it didn't look awful with them. And obviously there were moments with Cleveland. I mean, think about it. There was that playoff game at Arrowhead, Andy, where they almost won that playoff game with Baker starting. So it's not like it's been, this isn't Sam Darnold, I guess. Baker has had some moments in the NFL where maybe it's not been first overall pick, but it's certainly been serviceable starter, and that probably is too negative of a term to even use. I'd say better than that. And also, it's not like Kyle Trask has been groomed and waiting as the backup, or they have this top 10, top 15 pick waiting for them. So again, those games coming up on Sunday, 3:00. It'll be Baltimore and Kansas City. Slight favorite there, the Ravens in that one. A big second half on the ground for them. Lamar Jackson had some MVP moments in that second half. And then, obviously, the NFC title game, 49ers and Lions. Shameless plug, Andy, for the website right now. I've done my first mock draft look here for the Colts. So this is pretty much, you gather up, a handful of mock drafts. I do this every couple of weeks.
Oh, no, you should be doing this. This is great.
As we start to get closer to the NFL draft. And really the big, I think, first event of the offseason is about to happen. This will be next week in Mobile. It'll be the Senior Bowl. And I think our listeners or followers of the Colts will certainly realize Chris Ballard is a huge Senior Bowl advocate. I would say routinely, in 10, 11-man draft classes, hell, I'd say probably half of them are products of the Senior Bowl. He is a huge believer in that event, guys that perform well there. So that's something, of course, to keep an eye on. So I looked at 6 mock drafts, all right? And I look at the names slotted to the Colts at number 15 and the positions slotted to the Colts at number 15 and think, this really fits a lot of what Ballard said a couple weeks ago at the season-ending presser. And the years that I've done this, a lot of times you get the national pundits, and I feel like they don't have a great pulse on exactly what the Colts' needs are. And whatever, it's 32 teams. I'm not acting like they should be speaking gospel on the Colts. But if you look at it right here, they've got 3 corners going to the Colts of the 6 that I looked at, 2 wide receivers, and then probably the name that will attract the most attention on it. They do have Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia. Maybe calling him a tight end is unfair. A lot of people he's just a weapon, flat out. And Shane Steichen would be foaming at the mouth to get a player like that. But think back to what Ballard said, Andy. 3 corners, 2 wideouts, and a tight end. So if you just want to boil it down to 3 pass catchers and 3 corners, he often mentioned in that presser a few weeks ago, we need to get more explosive on both sides of the ball. 3 pass catchers and 3 corners, in different levels of explosiveness, one trying to create them, the other's trying to limit them, this kind of checks out.
Let me ask you guys this. Other years, how are the mock drafts lined up to what Ballard has done?
I would say not very well,
Okay,
especially
that's how I feel as well.
in the early portions of the offseason.
Sure. Well, I mean, you still don't have, the new season doesn't start until March, so you still have all these free agents.
Yeah,
you're going to go
Michael
through
Pittman's
injuries.
decision
You're
would
gonna,
impact this hugely.
100%. Yeah, Michael Pittman doesn't come back, then someone like a Keon Coleman or a Brian Thomas or someone like that. That's the other wide receiver there. Brian Thomas is at LSU.
Do you view corner this highly?
I think I do for them. I could understand why you would say no to that, but I think I do. My question is, and I had this written down, it's interesting you bring this up, and then you wrote about it on the website. My question for everybody, I think, is, what do you think about Brock Bowers?
At 15.
Yeah. To me, that's the number one question. If you go with if you go with Kool-Aid McKinstry, for people that don't know, he's one of the corners, obviously, there at Alabama. And the thing to know is, whether it's Senior Bowl, we know how, you guys, listen, in Indianapolis, we know how the combine works. There's going to be guys that go to the combine that absolutely blow up in a good way and guys that blow up in a bad way. You're going to have injuries to some of these prospects. You're going to have an off-the-field issue to somebody here who's going to be taken pretty high. So there's a lot of water to go under the bridge. For me, the question I have is, what do you think about Brock Bowers? And does he get to 15? If he's still there at 12 or 13, is that someone the Ballard would want to make sure that he goes up and gets? Is it no, we're going to sit pat at 15, and whoever comes our way, whether it's, that second tier of wide receiver, whether it's the end of the first, perhaps second tier of cornerbacks, where are we going to go? To me,
I think there's a better chance of you starting for the Giants next year than Chris Ballard trading up, by the way.
Listen, I'm with you. I think, to me, it starts with, what do you think about Bowers in all of these? And that's what I'm trying to sort through.
Yeah, I'd be all in on it. I think he's such a unique player. I get that the tight end history at that position is not necessarily one where you need to be spending high first-round picks on them and get the benefit of that. I mean, hell, look at some of the tight ends we're going to see this coming weekend, whether it's Mark Andrews, whether it's George Kittle. I mean, these guys were not high draft picks. I know Sam Laporta was taken relatively high, but I just think that Bowers is different, and I think if that's kind of, you could make the argument, Andy. Again, I still think you need to go out and find a wideout, but right now, if you ask Colts fans, they'd probably feel better about their wideout group than their tight end group. So if you really want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it, if you get a Bowers and you re-sign Pittman, and all of a sudden Alec Pierce is starting to be more of a weapon with Anthony Richardson's big arm, do you have a little bit more than maybe it looks like on paper right now? So I would be a fan of Bowers at 15 because I just think he's a weapon. I think maybe labeling him as just a tight end would be unfair to that end. The other question, though, is I do not view corner on the same level as the other positions. And I get that the corners in the secondary were a big issue for the Colts this past season. But at some point, you've got to rank these things. They can't all just be on one tier. And the scarcity of edge rushers, the one position we don't see here in the early mock draft look, is a bit concerning to me, if I'm going to be totally honest. But again, I would go a little edge rusher probably at the top, wideout very close to being second, and again, wideout pass catcher, if you want to label it a little bit more accurately. But at corner, it's a need, but it's not as high as the other two because I kind of look at Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, and I guess Dallas Flowers. I hate to bank on guys coming off a torn Achilles.
Well, what about Kenny Moore, too? Again, we don't know what's going to happen with Kenny Moore.
I guess I'm going
it's
a little
big
bit
deal.
more outside corner than I am kind of nickel slot. I kind of look at those three and think, all right, Juju, Jalen Jones, Dallas Flowers, those three, can you find at least one answer, maybe a half of an answer? And does 1.5 kind of get you by for the time being? And then again, maybe you draft a corner in round 3 or something like that, so you still give that group another reinforcement. But those were kind of my early impressions exiting this first mock draft look. Your question, is Bowers there at 15? Is that too high for a tight end? And I say that in quotes. And then secondly, does Chris Ballard view corner in the same light as the other needs. I do not, but that's just me speaking on my own opinion.
I wish I knew more about Brian Thomas out of LSU. He's going to be a hot name. He's 6'3", 6'4". He's
the
big
tall,
dude.
lanky guy. Malik Neighbors more of the explosive LSU wideout.
Right. I mean, he just Brian Thomas. It's just
Brian Thomas fits probably more of the Colts' height mold.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
what
he's 6'4", 210. I mean, he's a big guy. I had 17 touchdowns this past year. I mean, that LSU, LSU was one of those teams that scored a bunch of points and were a fun team to watch. But I feel like with your boy, who's your boy over there, the head coach, Brian Kelly, I just feel like no one watched LSU nearly as much. I watched that over the weekend, by the way. My family. What was he trying to do there? I still have no idea what he was
trying to get some
gumbo.
He's trying to get some gumbo.
Listen, I'm all about
he had one
Brock
beignet
Bowers.
and he started talking like that.
Right.
They have to do. You would agree that they have to do something at tight end in the offseason. Whether it's Brock Bowers or, Jelani Woods comes back. But even then, you have to get something free agent-wise, someone in the draft that you feel good about. You can't go into next year probably selling us Will Mallory.
Again, the Senior Bowl starts in a week. No tight ends are free agents. So anything they would do, you would think
be in the draft.
would be adding to that group.
You ever been to the Senior Bowl before? Oh, you would love that. You can go down to the Senior Bowl.
No.
Or is it Birmingham, isn't it? Is that where it's at?
Mobile, right?
Mobile,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think Mobile, Alabama's ever been very high on the old wish list.
I'm sure they have an Applebee's there.
By the way, did you see Lane Kiffin had his first Buc-ee's experience yesterday?
I did see that.
Oh, did he? I didn't see
tweeted
that.
about that.
His other tweet, Lane Kiffin had the Buc-ee's tweet, and then he retweeted an Ohio State guy. Did you see this? Ohio State, no, they're getting everybody. Ohio State's getting everybody.
Did I see that they spent $13 million on NIL?
That's what Lane Kiffin retweeted, that Ohio State has spent $13 million on NIL. And all I could think of was, poor Kirk Cignetti up at 3 a.m. with his binders talking to us in the morning. Brother, you better get some more recruits in there.
Did Lou
It's
Holtz
Ohio
contribute
State,
anything to the $13 million there for the Buckeyes?
I don't think he did. Speaking of IU, let's play this. Again, Gregg Doyel going to join us here at the top of the hour. We should play this just because it is both kind of funny and kind of sad. So C.J. Gunn on Friday night got tossed from the game for we call it the little chicken elbow up to the face of
got the wing a little too high.
a Wisconsin player. And of course, Indiana lost that game 91-79.
Wisconsin guy kind of nuzzled into C.J. Gunn.
He did. There's some nuzzling going on. So C.J. Gunn tossed from the game. They went to break. This is on Learfield over on our sister station, WIBC. And they come back from break. Don Fischer unhappy with the Hoosiers.
And I have never said this before in my 51 years behind the microphone at Indiana University, but I am embarrassed for this ball club.
Right now.
Not because of the score.
How is this the team, out of all the teams that he has seen, good or bad, how is this the team that's breaking Don Fischer, the Hall of Famer, 51 years behind the microphone? It's this team that's breaking him. How?
Well, I say this in all seriousness because, I mentioned the stat earlier, and I kind of joked about it. I saw something that they lead college basketball in flagrant fouls. I based off that comment by Don, it's a little bit more of off the court or not necessarily, play.
Not
just
basketball-wise, right.
Three-pointer
Right.
after three-pointer or free-throw after free-throw there. I think embarrassment is probably a fair word to use. And I would say more overall. Like, I thought about it watching that game Friday night. Andy, I can't even recall us having like a 1 to 2 game stretch where we're like, man, Indiana's starting to play some better basketball.
Right.
Like, I mean, remember the first half of the first game of the season, Florida Gulf Coast with their best player
They
not
barely
playing,
won games. Army,
and they
a bunch of
barely
games.
won. Then they play Army, who was like 357th in college basketball, and they're like down late in that game. Like, again, a nice 40 minutes against Ohio State at home, but then that was quickly followed up by a poor performance. It's like they just have not even had a fleeting moment or two. I'm like, every team usually has like a 2 or 3 game sequence where you're like, all right, here we go. Okay, I see some life. I see some, right lineup combinations. And Indiana hasn't even sniffed that this season.
Everything has been, they've been so disappointing. Are they going to make the tournament? It's all been big picture sadness.
Yes.
It hasn't. That's all it's been.
Sad, pathetic, embarrassing, however you want to describe it. Don Fischer using that word, embarrassing. Very accurate. Nothing for Indiana, mercifully, until Saturday. It'll be Illinois for them, a road game at the other Assembly Hall coming up. All right, Gregg Doyel, he joins us next.
The Ride with And Andy on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Yeah, pretty good commute this morning. I think all of us here on the show made it in pretty easy. It's good. Last week was not the case. Supposed to rain, but get a little warmer this week, up into the 40s and 50s. KB and I will be wearing shorts in the studio on Wednesday if it gets to the 50s.
Look like Jason Kelsey.
Yeah, so that we'll have our shirts off. That would be a lot of fun as well. Obviously, talking Pacers back in action tomorrow night, 2-4 on the road trip. We have our Final Four set championship weekend coming up in the NFL. Tons of college basketball. So loaded on this morning. Gregg Doyel joining us here on. Oh, we just lost Gregg. All right, so we'll get him here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Tons of things. We were talking during the break where to lead off with Gregg. We can go anywhere. Where I was going to lead off, and we'll get him here, is, he's a storyline guy being a columnist. I'm interested which storyline between the Ravens and Chiefs and Lions and Niners he likes the most. Probably Detroit. But Gregg, back on the line, Gregg Doyel joining us here from the IndyStar. Gregg, good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry for hanging up on you. If you want the truth, I've been dealing with a sinus infection for about 5 weeks. I know a lot of people out there are dealing with all kinds of stuff. Worse than this, and I'm the kind of person that if you ask a question, I'll give you an answer, and I'm trying to cough on you here.
Oh, well, that's okay, man. I know it's hard to shake those things. I'm sure the weather being 3 below hasn't helped clear that up. But Gregg joins us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. I was saying when we were reconnecting with you, Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, and Niners, you're a guy that enjoys a good story. Which of these storylines interests you the most, and which storyline would you like to see in the Super Bowl in a couple weeks?
I want to see the quarterbacky guy get a Super Bowl. I want Lamar Jackson to win one. I don't like and if it wasn't him, I was hoping for Josh Allen, but he's out. I don't like it when we do this to greatness. We did it, and I'm not a Jim Boeheim guy. In fact, Google me and Boeheim, and we had a moment once. But I didn't like it when Boeheim was – and Roy Williams too. Until they win one, they're ripped because you haven't won one. It's just not that easy, and it's a roll of the dice. Anyway, I don't like it. And Painter's getting it now in the Final Four. I don't like undervaluing greatness because – the 1 or 2 games that have to go their way over the course of 300 don't. So I would like to see Lamar Jackson win a Super Bowl and just shut everybody up for once. Like 2 MVPs not enough. If that's not enough, then go win one, Lamar.
He's Gregg Doyel. He's from the Indianapolis Star. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Gregg, I want to go back, and hopefully you can kind of take us, behind your eyes, if you will, back to Indiana-Purdue last Tuesday night and the column that you wrote there in regards to Zach Edey and what you kind of saw at the end of the game. And feel free to take it wherever, whether you want to go down the Edey route in Purdue or if you want to go down the Indiana route. But for those that maybe have missed your column, I thought that was a pretty unique scene that you kind of painted for all of us on Tuesday night.
Yes, thank you. Really, thank you. Covering an IU Purdue game is tough. I make it tough for me. My job's fun, but I make it tough because I want to honor both schools, both fan bases. I want everybody to want to read the story, and I'm aware that the headline says one team lost. Well, those readers aren't going to want to read. So I'm always debating in my head, what do I do? How do I go about this? How do I give both schools fair attention in one story when one of them won by 20? And those are my thoughts as I'm walking down from the media seating I have. Coming through the crowd. And then, truth is, I anticipated some ugliness, but not this one. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go walk over there to the IU tunnel where they leave, and I just want to see if Woodson or Xavier Johnson is treated poorly. And that's so I was over there just, maybe that happens, and if it does, I'm going to write about that because that's not appropriate. It didn't happen. And I'm turning to leave. Okay, let's go to the media room. And I hear this one guy, and the arena is not empty, but after having 17,000 people in there, it might as well be empty. Everybody's filing out. I hear one guy just taunting Zach Edey mercilessly, and he had some lines in there that I didn't say, like, you're going to be a Walmart greeter, Edey, and you suck. And I'm watching this just thinking, well, you're an idiot. But it keeps going, and I'm watching Edey do a live TV interview at midcourt, and I see him wave at the guy and smile. Like, he can hear him. The guy's 15 rows up in the corner behind a basket. So I don't know how many feet that away from Edey is. I'm going to guess 150 feet away, 100 feet. Edey's hearing him, smiling at him, and waving at him. The guy's that obnoxious. And the 4 people around this guy, there's two women and 2 guys. They're obviously in a group. They're all giggling and chuckling like, this is funny. This is what Twitter does. This is what social media does. It teaches people, conditions people, that if I can be mean to somebody and I get a few likes out of this or a few retweets or a few of my bros tell me way to go, then that's worth it. So I walked that way, not necessarily think I'm going to write about it, but maybe. And I started talking to him about it, and he's not repentant at all. Even when I'm saying, he goes, he sucks. We had 33 points. He's terribly at 14 rebounds. He's a joke. Did you look at the scoreboard? Like, I'm actually starting to taunt him. Like, there's a scoreboard up there. Do you see that? And then he gives me a name, and it's clearly not his name, and he thinks he's so smart. He's smirking at me. I realize that's not the name you gave. That's not your name. I looked it up, and it's not. I got an email a couple days ago. If that guy's listening, I hope you're scared. I got an email. I know your name now. I know it. Every time I go to Assembly Hall, and when I say every time, Kevin, I mean every effing time, I'm going to go look for him, and I'm going to go tell him his name right to his face and then see what happens. And if he does anything that I think is worthy of a story, he'll be in the paper the next day with his name. And I know what he looks like, too. I got a mugshot.
Are we close at all to talking about Mike Woodson's future?
Well, yes, because not necessarily because this season isn't going the way people want it to go. In a vacuum, we don't live in a vacuum, and I don't write in a vacuum. But in a vacuum, Trace Jackson Davis leaves, statistically one of the greatest. I mean, never mind. One of the best players of all time in this great program. He's gone. A few others are gone. I think there's one starter back from last year. I believe it's one, maybe two. So we could look at this and say, this is going to happen. Give him some time. But the way it's happening and the way it's happening with misbehavior or lack of composure, I guess is a better word, by players, and the things he's allowing and tolerating, it's got the fan base angry. And then you factor that by this fan base doesn't do patience. It just doesn't. It hasn't. You would think after 30 years, after post night, that the fan base would be conditioned to patience. They're not. They're not patient at all. And so this is one of those deals, and this happens all over the country, where the tail does wag the dog. The dog is IU. The tail is the fan base. And the fan base, if they decide they're done with you, they're done with you. And they were done with Crean, and it might have been time to go, but they were done with him. They were so done with him, if you remember, IU would not play a home game in the NIT because they didn't want their coach to get booed on national TV. That's why they got rid of him. And they were done with Archie Miller, and they should have been. But anyway, they're getting done with Mike Woodson, and when that happens, it's like, there's a tidal wave coming. And Scott Dolson and IU, that they can try and stop it, but it's bigger than them.
How do you handicap, though? I lived in Louisville, and Gregg Doyel with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline, and they got in bed with family. They hired Kenny Payne, and Kenny Payne's been a disaster, and Mike Woodson has not been Kenny Payne. He has obviously been much better than that, but you're still in business with family. How do once I throw that into the equation, now what? Because, things can get sensitive, and they can get sensitive pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, and I realize my last answer could be interpreted, and maybe it's my fault, as I think he's going to be fired after this year. I didn't mean that. I was answering Kevin's question. Your question was something along the lines of, are we at the point where, what'd you ask me?
When do we start talking about Mike Woodson's future?
There. We're there. We're there. Now, that future doesn't mean today. It doesn't mean tomorrow. And I actually wrote this after the Rutgers game, and I regret the way I wrote it because I wasn't clear enough. And people at IU saw what I wrote, and they weren't happy about it. And I don't blame them. And I told them I got that part wrong. Not wrong, but I worded it poorly. What I wrote was, this is the kind of loss, something like, this is the kind of loss, the key words were, it starts the clock ticking on his tenure. And when I wrote that in my head, what I meant was not tick, 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 he's fired in March. What I meant was, I should have written this. There are two kinds of coaches, really, in college basketball, or anywhere. There's the kind of coaches that leave when they want to, and there are the kind of coaches that leave when they're told to leave. That's what I meant. And Woodson is becoming the kind of coach that won't get to pick his exit. He'll leave when they tell him to leave, and so, which means the clock is ticking. It's not in his control anymore. But I didn't mean then, and I don't mean right now he'll be fired in March. What I mean is the fan base is getting loud, and I don't mean that and I'm not backtracking. I'm trying to be more clear. The tidal wave's coming. I don't think the pressure builds up. I don't think the weight of it builds up that they would ever fire an alum, Mike Woodson, after 3 years. I don't think he's going to get fired after year 3. You don't do that to Mike Woodson. You don't. But the clock is ticking. Is that a long-range clock? Is it a stopwatch? I don't know, but the clock is ticking.
Gregg Doyel with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline, IndyStar. You can check out all of his stuff. Always a fantastic read. On the other end, KB and I were talking about this, Greg. This week, ho-hum, 2 road Big Ten wins. Zach Edey, what was it? The last 3 games, KB, what was it? 30 and 18?
31 and 18.
31 and 18 the last 3 games. Whether it be Purdue or Edey, I know they've had the issues in March, but boy, Greg, we need to make sure we're not taking it for granted what we're seeing with this team and specifically the greatness we're seeing with Zach Edey.
Right, but we sort of are. We sort of are because and Purdue is they've sort of done that to us. They keep losing, and they don't just lose. And I love Matt Painter, but they don't just lose in the Sweet 16. It's been rounds 1 and 2, and mainly 1. And just like I was saying, IU fans ought to be conditioned to be patient, but they're not. Purdue fans and just in general college basketball fans are kind of conditioned to think what you're doing right now is great, Purdue, but we need to see more. And that's the way it used to be with Gonzaga. Gonzaga was, okay, Gonzaga, great. You won 30 games. You're get to the Elite Eight or be quiet. So Purdue is reaching that point, and which makes it. And I try to enjoy it when I do enjoy it when I watch it, and I wrote about it, and I try to write about it. As in, I'm watching something that I'm not going to see this again. I'm just not. And I'm not going to take this for granted. But at the same time, let's acknowledge that this team, this program, will not be judged by what it does December to February. It's going to be mid, late, even early March, even early April. But we're watching something that we're not going to see. We're never again going to see. And I want you to go back and Google. We're never going to see this again. I'm wrong a lot, but 4 years ago, when the first time I laid eyes on Zach Edey, and we were just starting to learn his story. Okay, you played hockey, baseball, you've been playing basketball for about 6 months, whatever, and he was scoring 14 points in 13 minutes, and not looking like this, but still looking unstoppable. I wrote that we don't know what his ceiling. We've never seen anything like this. We don't even know what he's going to be because we've never seen a guy this big, this raw, and yet this good this early. We have no idea what he's going to be in 4 years. Had you told me 4 years ago when I wrote that story, he's going to be a 2-time National Player of the Year, I'd have said, that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that we've never seen anything like this, and we'll never see it again. So let's please enjoy it.
He is Gregg Doyel. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Obviously, you read his work over at the Indianapolis Star. In yesterday's paper, it was a column on Jim Irsay and right now the health issues for the owner and how the Colts as a franchise need to handle things moving forward. Greg, I'm curious, what – I know it's probably an obvious answer, but what was maybe the tipping point in getting you to write a column that I don't want to speak for yourself, but I'm sure you've obviously put a lot of thought in something along those lines even prior to, maybe what's unfolded here over the last month and a half.
I appreciate that sensitive question because I didn't want to touch this. I didn't want to write about it. I don't know what there's to say. There's a guy battling addiction, and it's terrifying and frightening and devastating and all that. But I think for me the tipping point came when Chris Ballard said he's in stable condition, and I hate to put that on Ballard, but we asked him you were there, Kevin. We asked him at his end of the year press conference, how is Mr. Irsay, and he said he's in stable condition. I heard that and thought, okay,
yeah,
this is different.
The quote stood out. The quote stood out, Greg. It did.
Well, yeah, because stable. If someone is stable, sometimes is good. If somebody is has almost died in a car crash and 3 weeks later they're unstable, that's a great update. If a guy was and we didn't even know about the overdose yet. Actually, the overdose news of December 8th came out a few days after Ballard, I think. But we knew he had an upper respiratory. We knew he'd been told that. We knew he'd been kind of disappeared from view, which is not like Jim Irsay. And all of a sudden he's stable. As I wrote in the story, is that supposed to be comforting? Consider me uncomfortable. And then a couple of days later, the news of the overdose, Carmel police think it was an overdose. We don't know, but Carmel police labeled it a suspected overdose. So that news came out, and at that point, I'm almost ashamed that I haven't written about it yet because just like you guys talking about it, there are certain things that are so big in this market. If you have a job like you guys have, you have a job like I have, you can't just say, "Boy, that's touchy. I'm gonna leave that one alone." So you have to go after it. And now knowing what I know, or at least hearing what I hear. And I guess you're going to ask me a question here in a minute, but knowing what I know or believing what I believe, I wish I hadn't written as much as I wrote, because what I wrote was it's time for him to pass the team on to his kids. It's time for him to pass the team on to his kids for a couple of reasons. One is he clearly, by his own words, he's been fighting addiction and has been into rehab 15 times, by his own word, at least. So what he's doing, which is running the Colts, and fighting his addiction, it's not working. And I'm not talking about the Colts. I'm not saying look at the Colts record. No, it's not working for him. He needs to, if I can lecture an adult for a minute, he needs to give up control of the team, back away, and just get your sober and get okay if you can, recover. And I wrote that, and then I wrote also while you're at it, get the transmission of this team going to your daughters, because what we don't want to have happen is if you've been in rehab 15 times at least, if you've had 2 now suspected overdoses where they've had to revive you from death, that means you can't take a day for granted at all. Get this progression handled from you to your kids, because if it goes into probate, all bets are off. All bets are off for everybody, and that includes our city, just because we don't know. That guy's lived an interesting life, okay? We don't know how he's lived. We don't know who he knows. We don't know, we just don't know. And Jim Irsay himself fought this when if you guys, well, you won't remember. I don't remember, but I just know this. Robert Irsay, when he died 30 years ago, he wanted the team to be passed on to his son Jim. Well, it wasn't that easy because Robert's wife, Jim's stepmom, fought it, and they had to go to court. So, and we will never know, thank God. We'll never know if she had won. What happens to the Colts if she had won control? Are they still here 30 years later? We'll never know. We'll never know. So I wish I hadn't written that much about it, because it just seems like it's even worse than I mean, you guys are hearing the same things I'm hearing, I'm sure. And you don't, the thing is, you don't know what's a rumor.
Yeah.
You don't know what's real.
I'm worried about him, Greg.
Right. I'm worried about him. I'm terrified for him. And it's like, I don't, let me put it this way. I don't, as far as sources on this story, there's really only, as far as sources you believe, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. 10, the highest would be, Irsay himself or someone in his family. If they told you something, you believe that 100%. An email you get, and I've gotten a million of them, that's a 1 or even a 0. Doesn't mean anything to me. But I've heard from 2 people in the last couple of days that have not said to me, this is how he is. What they've said to me is expressed they're almost mourning right now. And it just scares me. Like you said, Kevin, it's scaring me. What is going on here? How bad is he? And I wish I hadn't talked about, stepping away from the Colts, because I think that's almost the least of our problems right now.
Yeah, I don't want to be too insensitive, Greg, and immediately transition to what down the road, whenever this comes, what would the franchise look like underneath the daughters? But I will ask you that. Again, I apologize for the insensitive nature that might seem, but I don't know if you've ever got the impression of I guess I'll speak for myself. I've never got the impression that all of a sudden, whenever this passing of the franchise happens, that boom, the owners or the daughters would sell it tomorrow and just say, yeah, the inheritance tax is this, and oh my gosh, look at all this generational wealth for all of our children and future grandkids, et cetera, et cetera. We are gonna wipe our hands of it and move on. Look at how much NFL franchises sell for nowadays. I've never gotten that impression, if any, and to be fair, it's not like we've gotten a whole lot of insight on that, I think. But have you ever got an impression from what you think life after Jim Irsay with the Colts would look like?
No, but I have an opinion on it, and the opinion is his daughters, 2 of them for sure, and I don't know. Let's see, I know Carly a little bit. I know Kaylin, Casey. Is it Casey?
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I don't know her at all.
Yeah.
At all.
And she's the least involved of the 3.
Okay, and that'd be why. But 2 of them are very involved, and I mean no disrespect. I'm just saying I don't know. But the 2 of them are very involved. Carly's involved to the point where I'm sure you've seen her, Kevin, at Grand Park. She's walking around the field with a notebook. She's taking notes.
Yeah, she's in every practice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every practice, right? And then Kaylin's involved in her own way and big ways, including the kicking the stigma that she's the one behind that. So what I'm saying is, these are not hands-off daughters. These are not I don't think they're people that just want to be done with this franchise, and first chance they get to make $4 billion split 3 ways, they're going to do that. I don't see that. They're kids, however many of them have kids. I know, well, obviously they attend schools in this area, but I know which one they've attended, and they're putting. My point is, they're putting down roots. Like the girls could have lived anywhere. They're putting down roots. They know what their dad wanted. They know what the name Irsay, how it's associated with the Colts. And yes, Robert left Baltimore 30-something years ago. Jim isn't Robert. He's just not. He's not. His dad had his own things, and Jim's heart is enormous, and maybe Robert's was too, but before social media and whatnot, no one really knew what he was all about. We know what Jim's about. He wants it to be here. His daughters know that. I think it'll be here. But I also know that you just don't know. You just don't know. You literally don't know none of us have been. I mean, look at the Live Golf Tour. People that have John Rahm was loyal to the PGA Tour and has more money than he'll ever spend. Generational wealth, just about. And yet I think he just took a huge payoff to go to the Live. You just don't know what happens when people get offered $4 or $5 billion. I can't even imagine what that would feel like.
Gregg Doyel with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. He writes for the Indianapolis Star, columnist there, IndyStar.com. I guess no good way to transition. I know you've written about this, recently, so I'll ask you. Just 2 games down now. Pascal Siakam traded to the Pacers. I know you're a fan of it. What does it do for expectations this year, Greg, in your mind, and just overall as a franchise? What does it signify that they were, able to go out there, take a big swing, get an all-star back, and hopefully you sign them this offseason?
Yeah, I think what it does is it puts them one player away, and you talk about perfect timing. The All-Star break is coming here, and so the world's best players, whether 30, 40 of them are on rosters or the next 40 or 50 are just here to watch it, they're all going to be here, and they're all going to see downtown Indy. And downtown Indy at a moment like this there's nothing better. Now you could argue about downtown Indy in June. I don't know, but right now they're going to see this city, this fan base at its absolute best. And it's going to be hard for everybody. It's going to be hard for everybody to turn down the Pacers going forward. Most of them are, obviously, but all you need is one. It's going to be really hard because they're going to see what's happening here. Apparently the league itself loves Tyrese. And you watch him play, and he plays with this joy. It's like magic. He plays with joy like Magic Johnson. He just loves what he's doing, and you can see it on his face. And people want to play with guys like that, especially because they pass the ball. And so the expectations for me going forward are rather large. Top 4 seed in the East next year, I hope for sure. This year, my only hesitation is, and I've seen they've lost a couple games already, my hesitation is I remember what happened with the Miami Heat when they got the big 3 15 years ago or so. Their first 10 or 12 games, they were under 500. It takes a while to get going. And then they caught their wind, and then by the end of the year, they were one of the best teams in the league. The Pacers don't really have that luxury. They're already in the middle of it, and they're going to try and introduce Siakam, and it's not as jarring as 3 guys, but still, he becomes your number 1 offensive option, just about, or at least he should be. Haliburton always is. The ball's in his hands, but as far as he's a point guard, he wants someone else to just do the heavy lifting. Pascal's going to become that guy, and that's hard to do in real time. So I don't know what I expect this year. I'd like him to win a first-round series. How about that? I would really like to see that. But going forward, I think the bar gets set higher next year.
Greg, hope that sinus infection finally subsides for you. Hope Cap is hanging in there in this cold weather. And as always, we greatly appreciate the time here on this Monday morning. So thank you.
You're so nice. Thank you for having us. Bye.
That is Gregg Doyel there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Again, his latest at the Indianapolis Star. I'll just echo what I said to Greg for those that might have missed it. Again, updates are going to be scarce on the Jim Irsay front, but I'm very worried, Andy. Very, very worried. Thinking about him, thinking about his family, of course. It's just it sucks, frankly.
Well, can I ask you something on this? Because again, his health is number 1. I want to be clear with that.
Right.
The only reason I bring this up is the reason it's being talked about is, Jim Irsay is one of those owners that you feel like, listen, go back to the Jonathan Taylor stuff. Jonathan Taylor going on Irsay's bus, right? Out at training camp and, him being very vocal when it comes to signings and when it comes to roster construction. It's not that he doesn't let Ballard and the football people do his job. He does, but he also doesn't disappear, right? He also doesn't disappear to the background. That's my read of the situation. Coming up here in a month and a half, you do have free agency starting in the NFL.
2 weeks ago, the Colts played the biggest game in that stadium in 9 years.
In 9 years.
And for Jim Irsay not to have been seen.
I know.
I cannot stress enough how telling that was for me personally. And just what? Jim Irsay's not like other owners. He is there. He is there in a very, very present way.
He's tweeting out. He's seeing all those things.
Every post-game locker room has him. You get videos from him at games, all of that stuff. And so, yes, we'll certainly continue to keep you updated on that end. But thinking about him, thinking about his family here. All right, coming up in a bit, we will give our GOATs from the weekend. Before that, let's go to a morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, 117-110, that's your final last night. Suns over the Pacers. Pacers dropped to 24-19 on the season, just 2-4 on this road trip. Boy, we came in here Friday after that Sacramento win feeling pretty good. 2 losses this weekend to Phoenix last night. Rick Carlisle post-game on the loss.
We had chances down the stretch. Defensively, it's just awfully hard to stop their death lineup they have with him at 5 and 2 other All-Stars and 2 other guys that can really shoot the ball and make plays. I was disappointed with the result, but not the effort. Thought the effort was very good, and our guys off the bench did a nice job. Walker was ready, didn't play in Portland, was ready tonight. Sheppard did a good job. Those guys, have been toiling in the background, and this was another opportunity for them, and they were both pluses in the game, so that's good to see.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with Rick on what you got from the rookies. I think there's a lot of different Pacers angles we can get into here even today. I want to go back to Friday night, though. That was the loss that, you don't usually say there are bad losses on a road trip. In the second night of a back-to-back, it might be a bit unfair to call any loss a bad one, but you get swept by Portland in the season, and your bench was really terrible. Matherin, very bad on Friday, and he wasn't great yesterday by any means.
He was 10th in minutes yesterday. 10th in minutes.
And he deserved to be 10th, to be totally honest with you. But, Andy, the Pacers outscored the Trailblazers on Friday night from behind the arc 60-12. 60-12, the Pacers outscored the Trailblazers from behind the arc, and they lost the basketball game. You know how hard that is to do?
The Pacers shot 47 threes. Portland shot 12.
Pacers hit 20 threes. Portland hit 4.
It's a terrible loss.
Just got dominated.
It's a terrible loss.
The paint.
They're 7-12 at home as Portland.
66-26. And again, with how jumbled the East is, you look at the upcoming schedule this week. Haliburton doesn't play last night. Again, I think there's a lot of different areas we can go with the Pacers, so we'll certainly carve out some time for that here. Upcoming, the defending champs tomorrow night for Pascal Siakam's home debut. All right, yesterday, or I guess this weekend in the NFL playoffs, how about the Purdue guy, Derek Barnes, clinching it there for the Detroit Lions with his first career interception of Baker Mayfield. The Lions are going to the NFC title game. Andy hates the Lions, though. He made that very clear earlier today. They will be a touchdown underdog against the 49ers.
That's too much.
And then we will get the Ravens and Chiefs coming up on Sunday at 3 o'clock. The early line on that one, Ravens a slight favorite. I am not one that looks at the Tyler Bass missed field goal and think it's Scott Norwood 2.0. The whole drive, I'm thinking to myself, they need to bleed clock and they need to score a touchdown. I was not thinking field goal at all. I go, if you settle for a field goal, get ready to have Mahomes, Kelsey, Butker stab you in the back.
I thought it was a good call.
Exactly what's
well, that's how I thought they were going to lose. Was okay. You're going to give Mahomes this much time to go down the field and win the game. I will say though, and now I feel like I should have tweeted this out so people don't think I'm just a raging liar. I text a buddy on Bass's on the first possession of the game. The Bills go down and they score and they kick a field goal. If you go watch that, Bass's the field goal just barely kind of sneaks in.
Right.
And, he hit it pretty hard and he got it up there. And I think that's what he was trying to do, was to get it through the wind.
Well, he almost missed one extra point.
Well, yeah, he was trying to kick maybe too hard. I mean, here's me giving advice to a professional NFL field goal kicker. But
are you Jay Feely right now?
On that first one, I thought, man, I go, that's shaky. Little did I know, 3 hours later, he would be one of the GOATs. He's not my GOAT of the weekend. My GOAT of the weekend, Marc Dighton will love. I'll just leave it at that as a tease. You like that? Mark
Okay.
Gotcha will love
All right.
Mike Go to the weekend.
Jordan Love.
Crack one of these
Has
beers
nothing to-
open before you do
Has
that.
nothing to do with Jordan Love. What did I get you, by the way? I got you Sun King. Was it Weemac?
Weemac, yeah.
I'm a
Oh, there
Weemac
you go.
fan.
4-pack of Weemac. I'm excited.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
always love having Weemac at the Indians game. Looking forward to that here
there's
coming up.
nothing better.
Although I look outside right now and think that's not happening anytime soon. All right, college basketball from this past weekend. We mentioned it to Gregg Doyel. Zach Edey's dominance continues. 14-point victory for Purdue in Iowa City. But think about this weekend for Purdue. I cannot emphasize this enough. I know Indiana's going to be the butt of a lot of jokes right now with how they've played. But for a Big Ten team to go on the road, get 2 wins in a week, speaks for itself. How about a 21-point win over your rival and then a 14-point win over, I mean, I think Iowa's a tournament team. Certainly they aren't in the basement of the Big Ten. Extremely impressive by Purdue. They actually built that lead kind of in the first half without Edey and then certainly held it and expanded it with him on the floor. Purdue is back in action tomorrow night. That is 9 o'clock against Michigan back inside of Mackey. Indiana went to Madison, and it usually unfolds the way it did unfold Friday night. In Madison, they give up 91. C.J. Gunn gets ejected. Don Fischer disgusted. Khalil Ware didn't play. I assume the ankle will be all right. They've got a week off, but they'll play Illinois coming up this weekend. And Butler gets a needed win at home over one of the worst teams I've seen. That would be DePaul. DePaul has 3 wins on the year.
And you were there. Look at you.
Yep.
Signing
great effort by
autographs,
Matty
doing your
Bowen, trying
thing.
to get Max Bowen on Simba Cam. They
Oh,
kept on
did you?
showing Barry Collier with the grandson. I guess the AD and the grandson or granddaughter. I couldn't get a close look. That probably takes precedent. But yeah,
You should have yelled at camera. Do you know who I am? Hold it, Jake. Where
I don't like that.
decided
I
not
don't like
to on that end. But Hink came over and tried to play peekaboo with Max. Max really wasn't
Okay.
having it, but great effort by Hink.
Should have yelled out Max Bowen's Colts prediction record.
I should.
That would have done it.
I know.
That would have put it over the top.
Tonight-
Butler Nova, by the way, coming up this Saturday. We'll give away a pair of tickets here later in the week.
This is probably something next year we'll be able to do, but does Max Bowen, and I don't know, you guys are probably looking at me like I'm an idiot. I don't know. Again, we have a 4-month-old, and I know nothing about kids. Everything I've learned about kids has been in these 4 months, okay? So I'm being honest. When you take Max there, you don't have to pay to get him in, right? You can sit him on your lap and he's good to go?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like, I don't
All
know,
right.
Mark, you can speak to it better. Probably most sporting events, 2 and under? Free?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Same with like flights and everything like
All
that.
right.
And you have the lap child and take advantage because once they pass that 2-year threshold, the costs start racking up.
Yeah, I think
no more
he's-
free Disney
I know,
World,
I'm
no
like,
more
wait,
free
I'm
flights.
paying-
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
paying how much for Rosie Bowen to probably sit on my lap for 90% of this sporting event or flight anyway?
That's what I thought, because I want to take him out to some stuff, but I'm like, I don't want to pay, $15.
Butler game's perfect because you've
Oh,
got
perfect,
a
yeah.
little track up top or however you want to call it, where kids can run around.
sure.
And, yeah, Rosie and Max both had a great time.
All right,
so.
good.
You could skirt those rules too because no one's checking birth certificates right out of the gate. So if you look a
No,
little smaller
TSA
or anything
checking
like
birth
that, yeah.
certificate's a little different than
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Butler
Yeah.
ticket holders.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
Where's
a
this
fun,
kid's ID?
fun time at Inkle on Saturday. Shout out to the IU women. That's now 10 in a row over Purdue. They get it done without Sydney Parrish. 15 threes for Terry Morin's bunch there as IU gets the road win. All right, coming up on the other side, we go hand out our goats from the weekend. Also, more Pacers chatter. The debuts, plural, of Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Haliburton return to the lineup for one game. We'll unpack a little bit more on the Pacers front as well. Thanks for tuning in to the Wake Up Call here on a Monday, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Let Bill Estes put you behind the wheel of the powerhouse brands that define American toughness. The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, we'll get to our GOATs of the weekend coming up here in just a second. Can I ask you something, Kevin Bowen? Can I ask you? Mark diked into. I just need to ask you guys this real quick. Why has it been like almost 2 weeks and Bill Belichick hasn't been hired in the Atlanta Falcons? Like, why did just hire Bill Belichick?
Well, it seems like the Falcons. Did I see a Harbaugh interview?
Yeah, I mean everyone's. I mean, I know they've interviewed coordinators, and there might be Slowick. You know, he's now available out of the Houston Texans.
Yeah, but if you want the Lions guys, that's not happening.
Ben Johnson, you're going to have to continue
Aaron
to
Glenn,
wait.
same boat.
But I'm sitting here saying, if the Atlanta wanted to hire Bill Belichick, hire Bill Belichick. It's been almost 2 weeks now.
Who's the better
what are we
hire,
doing?
Harbaugh or Belichick?
Harbaugh.
Maybe they want Harbaugh.
Maybe they do want Harbaugh. Well, go hire Jim Harbaugh then. Let's go.
So
Let's
we
get it done.
haven't really had anything out of the building, right? We've had two filled, and Gerard Mayo and Antonio Pierce.
Yeah.
Antonio Pierce was Friday. I don't know if that happened. I think that happened just after our show. So Antonio Pierce, take the interim tag off of him. So that leaves the other, 6 so far? And it seems like, based
surprising,
off
is it not?
Nick Sirianni reportedly firing his defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia will not be back. It seems like this is where we're at. Like, we will not get any more that'll trickle out here. So I'm trying to think of the openings that we still have. We've got Titans, Commanders, Panthers, Falcons, Seahawks, Chargers.
Yeah, that's what we have. And then 2 names just to watch. I know there was some scuttle this weekend. Would Jim Bob Cooter potentially be someone who would fit the OC job there in Philadelphia? They're trying to go back
Had to stop there.
Well, yeah, and, hey, they were so good was Philly with Shane Steichen.
And he would call the plays, which he's not doing
exactly. He would call the plays, probably be a raise, and he's been with Shane Steichen, so you would get some of that magic you would hope. So that's a name that's been thrown out there. And then I don't know if it was Ian Rappaport was throwing out there, if Vrabel doesn't get a job, would Vrabel go be the DC for Bill Belichick in Atlanta for potentially a year?
Take the year off?
Well, I mean, yeah, you could be a DC with your boy Belichick. You go do some television, make a few $100,000 probably with some
Vrabel,
television.
Harbaugh, Belichick. Who's the best hire of those 3?
To me, it's still Harbaugh. I mean, prime of his career, builds a program. I feel like he's going to win. If you got 5 years with Harbaugh, I feel like you would be in the postseason 3 or 4 out of those years, and I feel like 1 or 2 of those times you would make a deep run. You would have a chance, right? Don't you feel that way? With Belichick, I'm just not sure anymore about him because he's done so much losing post-Brady, and the quarterback position so bad in Atlanta. He has not proven that he can fix the quarterback position. In fact, quite literally, he's failed in New England the last 3 years doing so.
Is Atlanta the only place we've heard with him? Am I missing something?
I mean, that's the only one. Harbaugh's taken, a visit at 3 places now. So I don't know. And I don't know what I feel about Antonio Pierce. I guess it's, the thing I care about the least is, and this happens in college athletics a lot, is the players want a guy to be the coach. That doesn't mean that he should be the coach. And I guess that's a little bit how I feel about Antonio Pierce. Max Crosby, he may leave if he's not the head coach. Like, okay, let's see if he will.
Different public reaction to the Raiders and Antonio Pierce versus the Colts players and Jeff Saturday.
Yes. Again, I don't think you always need to follow the players on these sorts of things, but we shall see. All right, let's dive into it. Our GOATs, good and bad, our GOATs of the week. Let's hit the open.
That's why he's everything. That's why he's the GOAT. The GOAT.
Or GOAT.
This guy sucks.
Of the week.
All right, our GOATs of the week. The good GOAT, the bad GOAT. Where do you want to start? I'll let you guys choose. You want to do the warm and fuzzy?
Well, you were saying you've got one that'll make Mark Dykton
right, well,
happy.
yeah, let's go
so
there.
I
Start
feel like
there.
you got to go there. I've got
so,
a nerd one.
Okay, so that's
there's a shock.
it's the negative GOAT of the week. It's the small GOAT of the week, and Mark's going to totally buy this. So yesterday, watching some NFL football, the New York Jets tweet out, maybe Aaron Rodgers isn't human. And it's a video of Aaron Rodgers. Do you know where I'm going, Mark?
No.
Okay, it's a video of Aaron Rodgers, but you don't see him teeing off. You hear his buddies. Aaron Rodgers got a hole-in-one. And the video that the Jets put out there was somebody teeing off. Again, I couldn't see Aaron Rodgers at all swing the golf club. And then it was an edit, Mark. It cut to Aaron Rodgers on the green, walking towards the hole and picking up the ball.
Whoa, are you going Aaron Rodgers conspiracy theory here?
I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. No one believes that Aaron Rodgers got a hole-in-one, especially me.
So you don't even, wow, so you think it's just a blatant lie?
100%. Mark, look, you got to look this up.
I'm looking at the video now. Yeah, there's no evidence of him actually swinging club. He's just walking on like the cart path with like his hands over his head.
Now, this was pre-cell phone, pre-iPhone, I probably should mention, but my brother had a friend that would literally take a camcorder out of the golf bag, and every time he would get on a par 3, the camcorder would be set up so everyone would witness that.
And it was like an old school camcorder, too.
100%.
I love that.
I love it.
I adore that. That's a great story.
Rodgers is lying here. Wow.
I'm saying
there might be some McAfee listeners that would disagree with you on that.
I'm saying we need to get to the bottom of it. That's what I'm saying. If I got a hole-in-one, that's not how I would edit that video. Mark, you see it. Like, when they get to the green, it's like, okay, Aaron, now start walking towards the hole. I don't know. The whole thing is, it smells of a setup.
He did it for the views? Did it for the likes?
I did it for something. I don't know.
So is that your good goat or negative goat?
That's my negative goat.
The Jets trying to be relevant in January.
Yeah.
No,
Jets, leave us alone.
I'm with Andy.
Yeah, I figured you would be.
I don't buy it.
My I guess while we go down the negative path here, my negative one comes from Friday. I know it impacted a lot of people. I was texting Tony East and Jake Arthur about it. A little nervous for both of them. But the layoffs at Sports Illustrated. I don't know about you, Andy, but honestly,
I know.
Without Sports Illustrated, I'm not even sure if I'm doing this for a living. Like, it was that impactful for me growing up. It was a sprint to the mailbox every Thursday afternoon, knowing that the issue was waiting, not just a sprint when it was the swimming issue either, or the swimsuit issue. I should probably clarify.
Did your mom take the swimsuit issue from you at any point?
I think there were some moments I was like, "Wow, did I not get it this week?"
Well, that happened to me. What happened to this month?
They skipped 694 Carson Court. But I have really all the covers from, I think it's 2000 like 2012 still. Just so many iconic images, and reading Rick Riley on a weekly basis was always one of my favorite things doing growing up. So I hate it for the industry. That kind of speaks for itself. But also just the fan in me. It was so rooted in everything that Sports Illustrated was for me as a young, very impressionable human and sports fan. So absolutely hated to see that.
Yeah, I think the Star did, covers that related to Indiana, whether it be Hoosiers or Purdue, or obviously the Colts have had several. The Pacers, Reggie Miller, you can think of a couple already. I think the IndyStar did a good thing, but I don't even know. I don't even know what's left, what they're going to do going forward.
Yeah, I think there's a lot
of that. Like,
it
what's
lacks
happening?
A lot of clarity. And I was texting, because Tony East again writes for SI.com covering the Pacers, Jake Arthur for the Colts, and they both were kind of unsure as well. So again, I don't think it's like the entire company or things like that, but certainly there were some significant amount of layoffs there. So hated to see that.
My bad is people not using their listening skills. During the Bills-Chiefs game, there was a sideline report from Tracy Wolfson saying Willie Gay, who's been spying Josh Allen, is out with a neck injury. And then people who were not listening well just heard Josh Allen neck injury and started taking to social media, freaking out. What? He's injured? He's out for the game. This is horrible for the Bills. My brother was one of them. I was like, what are you talking about? Josh Allen's right there. He has 2 rushing touchdowns. What are you talking about? And it was just clearly, yes. Was it worded poorly? Yes, it was, Tracy Wolfson. It was not worded properly. But Willie Gay was injured, not Josh Allen. He was very much not injured at all, and he played the whole game. But people not using their listening skills, and it wasn't just one person. It was all over social media. What? Josh Allen's out? No, people. Just rewind 10 seconds, and you would have heard properly.
By the way, I know because Buffalo lost, we won't focus on this, but how about the Allen touchdown to Khalil Shakir? The 3rd and goal.
Oh, yeah.
When he rolled to his left across his body. They just gotten 2 penalties that seemingly knocked him out of realistic touchdown range. Like, there's 1 or 2 of those plays every single game that you're just in awe of. Obviously, they don't advance, so we won't focus on it, but damn, that was quite impressive by Josh Allen.
They don't mind, running Josh Allen. He puts his head down, doesn't he?
No.
He puts his head down. They don't have those conversations with the quarterback running like we've had here. I guess. Listen, my big goat of the week, and I've taken them to task. It's Jimmy Cook and his Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, to me, no one had more pressure than the Buffalo Bills this this game Sunday, this offseason. Like, to me, that's how I viewed it. I could be wrong. You could say, well, it's the Lions. This is their magical moment. Understandable. Lamar Jackson needs to prove this, and that, before the other night he was 1-3 in the postseason. I get all those things. But to me, the Buffalo Bills had the most. They finally had the game at home. They had the crazy stadium. They had the snow and the people shoveling. And this is not an all-time great Chiefs team. And the Chiefs walk in there and they win. And to me, this era of Buffalo Bills, the Bills are going to need to retool. That's just the way I view it.
So
that's
confused.
the kind of
Do
loss.
you have two negative goats?
No, that's my positive. It's the Chiefs.
The Chiefs, okay.
Yeah, it's the Chiefs, baby.
You were ripping the Bills, and I was like, wait a minute here.
Them. To me, they have to do full retooling. I mean, do we want Stefon Diggs here? I'm asking. Stefon Diggs
hell yeah.
didn't
Sure.
That's a topic.
Why would the Bills get rid of him?
I mean, they don't use him.
Well,
he has had a 100-yard game since the Giants back 2 weeks
I think
before
the Gabe Davis
Thanksgiving.
injury was a big one there.
That was a good that veered into negative land, I feel like.
Yeah, that was a little bit of everything on that one. I'm going nerd. I'm going the winner of the PGA Tour event. That would be a sophomore at Alabama. He would be Nick Dunlap.
Ooh?
The 20-year-old, he becomes the first amateur to win on the PGA Tour since Phil Mickelson. And that's a guy, pretty decorated resume. Won the U.S. Junior Am, won the U.S. Am. Tiger Woods, one of the very few people that have ever done that. But this is part of the reason why I love golf, the meritocracy of the PGA Tour that still is clinging by it. Here he is going up against Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, two very accomplished golfers in the final round. A big up and down on 18 to secure the one-shot victory. I was watching this with my brother. Ryan had it on his phone here. So it was NFL on the TV, Ryan Bowen with the PGA Tour event on his phone. Absolutely loved seeing that. And it's part of why I love the PGA Tour and golf.
Only Kevin Bowen could go PJ Golf on NFL Divisional weekend.
What was the guy's name again?
Nick Dunlap.
Okay, Mick Dunlap.
Nick,
so I need
Nick.
So I need to start paying attention. In a couple years, we might see this guy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay,
I mean, this is not
Masters.
like that. I mean, obviously it's an incredible accomplishment what he did, but it's not like that out of the blue. He's a very decorated.
Sure. I just don't follow it.
Junior
You follow
and
it. So
golfer.
well,
If you
there you
follow
go.
college golf, then we would have some issues.
Golf season starts at Augusta for me. That's when golf season starts.
You got Torrey Pines, a Wednesday through Saturday in primetime this
Golf
week, Marc?
season starts at Augusta for me.
You got any good ones, Marc?
Yes, the Packers losing in the playoffs.
Oh,
Packers fans may mock Bears fans. I was getting it left and right after the game went final. The Bears aren't in the postseason. Your team stinks. The problem is Bears fans know this already. We're fully aware of that.
Yeah.
You're not breaking news to us, Packers fans. The bar is very low when it comes to Bears success. For the Packers and their fans, they get their hopes up every year. We're making the playoffs. We're going to go to the Super Bowl. And what happens? The rug gets pulled out from under them, usually by the 49ers, who've had their numbers the last couple of years. Is Jordan Love pretty good? Yeah. But you've also had Brett Favre, and you've had Aaron Rodgers, and you've got 2 Super Bowls to show for it. So stick it, Packers fans.
I think one of the sadder.
What the hell is Brett Favre doing here?
I think one of the sadder states of fandom have been shared by each of you in the last couple of weeks.
They
when
really have.
You guys have celebrated the Packers and the Cowboys losing like literally your respective teams have won the Super Bowl.
But here's the thing: the Packers. Mark's like, you've only won 2. The Cowboys. It's been 30 years, brother. It's been 30 years since Jimmy Johnson.
The Packers are the Cowboys of the NFC North. They look pretty good on the record. They get to the playoffs, and they go down their leg.
Yeah, I mean, to Andy's point, the Cowboys would cut off limbs to have what the Packers have gotten here over the last couple of decades. All right, plenty of Pacers conversation still to get to. We'll have a pop quiz as well. Good Monday morning to you. Thank you for spending it with us. It is the wake-up call here on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Hey, it's JMV for CarX. Maintain road ready.
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, coming up top of the hour, Pascal Siakam, 2 games in his back pocket, if you will, with the Pacers. We'll dive into some of that. Did you guys happen to see the random Lions fan that was with Bills Mafia tailgating, and he got suplexed? I don't know the exact term.
Oh, I did see that.
And he,
yeah.
they basically, his ass was on fire, his backside was on fire, and he was sliding on the ice, and really nobody was helping him. Everyone just had their phones
I think when you hang out with Mafia, if your ass is on fire, that should be the least of your worries.
Oh, man.
I think that's almost required.
And then
hang out with them.
And then
something's got to be on fire.
And then the other thing, the camera is a great job by CBS. They found the crying fan in Buffalo when the field goal missed and the game was over.
He wasn't crying. He was weeping.
He was weeping
uncontrollably.
Do you want to be that guy?
Well, I always feel bad for the Villanova clarinet player. Remember her?
Of course I remember
That
her.
is a tough look going in the office
Now
on Monday.
she became an icon.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But see, I think in Buffalo, Mark, he comes in the office on Monday and they all embrace him. Like he's part of them. I mean, he's an adopted Mafia member if he wasn't already now.
See, it's difficult. I mean, you can become a meme, which could be good or bad. People could put their arms around you, or there's the other segment of the country that's laughing at you and making fun of you. It's a difficult position. Do you want to be the man or woman crying on CBS, Fox, or ESPN after to what was the Bills? An absolute devastating loss for them.
The sniffles in the clarinet, though, gets me every time.
There's a sad cake waiting for Mike at the office today.
We are with you, Mike.
We're with you, Mike.
Adam Schefter says
man.
49ers consider it 50-50 on Deebo Samuel coming up Sunday night.
I love the Lions plus the number.
This is a huge, huge injury. I think a lot of people realize what Deebo Samuel means to 49ers. If you look at the numbers, though, it is staggering what they've been like with versus without. I mean, hell, they almost lost without him over the final couple quarters on a Saturday night. All right, a lot of Pacers conversation to get to on the other side. Pascal Siakam's debut and a very nice night for the rookies amidst last night's loss. We'll do that next.
Query and Company.
NBA writer Evan Sidery is our guest. Evan, what will the Pascal Siakam...
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, 9 o'clock hour on this Monday. Appreciate you guys waking up with us. If you miss any of our conversations, we also had Gregg Doyel on in the 8 o'clock hour. You can check those out at 1075thefan.com. And as always, broadcasting live from the drivehuber.com studio. I know that wasn't Eminem, obviously the little hip-hop open that Marc had. Did Eminem do, I missed this, did he do anything around the game yesterday, Lions-wise?
We were kind of scrambling right around kickoff, and I was hoping to catch it, but I didn't see anything unless I missed something. I assume I
didn't
saw
see it either
on social media.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm just making sure. I'm just seeing what Detroit's up to.
You know, the 49ers do the boombox entrance, right? Can we get Eminem maybe to lead the Lions out of the visiting tunnel coming up on Sunday night?
It does look like he was there. I'm looking at a thing right now, and he was there in another Lions shirt at like the third quarter or something. So he was there.
So was
Peyton. Of course he was there.
Oh, everybody. Yeah, it was Peyton.
I mean,
everybody
everybody
who else
was there.
I saw was there, but there's quite a bit of people there.
Or Peyton was saying on the Manning cast there late in the year that Marshall and him go to one playoff game a year. So they picked Lions-Bucks.
That's the one? Okay. I like that. I'm good with that. Okay, so Pacers. We wanted to do Pacer conversation here. 2 games under their belt with Pascal Siakam. I found, something interesting that Gregg Doyel told us in the 8 o'clock hour. He's like, it's going to take some time. You're trying to get him going middle of the season. He brought up the Miami Heat when they did the Big Three. It took them a minute out of the gate. This is obviously middle of the season, not out of the gate. 2-4 on the road trip. Really, we're good with the road trip outside of that Portland game. Outside of that Portland game, that's a game he's got to win. He's got to win, especially when Haliburton is back. Then he was off. Wasn't a back-to-back, but was – or was it a back-to-back? Was it a back-to-back? No, it wasn't a back. It was a day in between there. You have Siakam now, a couple games under his belt. What have you liked? What have you – I don't want to say not liked, but what are the early returns? And I hope that you get the full roster coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah,
that's what I'm interested in.
I'd say what you like is, again, he's a guy that you throw the ball to, and he can go create, and he can go get you a bucket. Last night, the assist number had to be pretty high. I would guess 6 or 7 for him.
It was 7.
Yeah, and again, without Haliburton, you kind of needed some others to obviously help you out in that area, and he certainly provides that. I thought it was really interesting, and I think Phoenix kind of dictated some of this. Their big guy, Nurkic, was out, or was battling foul trouble, I should say. Both teams kind of bailed on their centers late. Durant and Siakam kind of became each team's center there. The Pacers didn't put Turner really back in the game at all in the fourth quarter there. So, again, I think from an isolation standpoint, offensively, there is a lot that you like with that. I know his point total last night wasn't super high, 15 or 16, but still, he is another option, which is obviously critical when you have Haliburton, when you don't have Haliburton, because teams are going to continue to try and take away Tyrese as best they can. I don't want this to come as just like a total shot at him that he can't guard anybody, because I don't think that is true. But, when the trade was made, Andy, one of the questions I threw to you, and one of the reasons why I was kind of lukewarm on it, was I don't think this does much, if at all, to improve your defense. And if you talk to people that watch the Raptors on a pretty night-in, night-out basis, what was the label to us? He's a passable defender, I think is what Doug Smith said to us when we had him on. Other people have said, he's kind of lost a step as he's reaching age 30. Again, I don't think he's like a flat-out liability, but this is not something, again, this is not OG Anunoby.
It's not OG Anunoby, right.
I mean, when you look at what the Knicks have had with Anunoby, it's absurd, frankly, how well they've played with him, especially him on the floor, how well they've played on the defensive end. But, Andy, I go back to this constant issue. This is pre-Siakam, and we've seen it in both games with Siakam. Go back to Friday night. Jeremy Grant, nice player, right? Averages 20 a game for one of the worst teams in the league. Not a great player, but, yeah, nice player. He's got 37 against you on Friday night. What did he have earlier in the year when they came here and beat you?
That's what I was going to look up, because if he had
34.
Was it 34? Yep, he had 34. Wow.
So Jeremy Grant's
goodness,
second and third highest scoring outputs of the season are against you. What does Durant go for last
40.
night? 40. Is Durant one of the most gifted scorers this league has ever seen? Arguably, probably the most gifted. Yes, that is still Durant's second highest point total of the season, and it's not like Durant lived at the foul line last night. I don't think he had a foul shot. So the continued issue, Andy, of letting these bigger wings, however you want to describe Grant and Durant, they're probably more like power forwards, honestly, is going to be an age-old question we have with the Pacers from here on out. And that's with or without Siakam. I just don't think Siakam necessarily walks in here and helps that significantly or cures it. So that is going to continue to be a question that I have for this team of, last night specifically, you wanted to play Nembhard and Nesmith a lot because they are probably your two best defenders without Bruce Brown. But they don't help you out a ton offensively, or at least as much as some others offensively. And then a guy that does help you out on offense is Buddy Hield. And if you watch the final 3 minutes, Phoenix was like, where's Buddy Hield? Let's get a switch and let's get him on Beal, or let's get him on Devin Booker and us go to work. So again, defensive issue continues. I said it earlier, and I think it's worth mentioning again. Friday night against Portland, you outscore them from behind the arc by 48 points. You had 60 points from behind the arc. You had 23s. Portland's got 12 points from behind the arc, and you lose the game. Why do you lose the game? Because you get outscored by 40 in the paint. So that defensive question is going to continue to be there with or without Siakam.
Yeah, and I think this week, I think you mentioned something that's pertinent to the conversation. Well, two things. Number one, this week for me, it's a difficult week. I understand that. Denver's in town on Tuesday, Philly on Thursday, and then right on the back, the Suns come back in town. You get them 2 times here in a week. At least you get them at Gamebridge. Like, I'm with you that we're to the part of the season now as we're past the halfway part. We're, approaching the trade deadline. You've made a move. We have the All-Star game that we can see that's going to be in Indy. Like, I'm now wanting to see kind of what this team has here. What I don't know is, and I wish he would tell us tomorrow if we have him on, which I assume we will, with head coach Rick Carlisle, I'm really hoping that he gives an insight on the things that they can do with Pascal Siakam on both sides, right? Defensively, what they think they can do with him that will help the team. I understand this is a move for offense, okay? But defensively, is there somewhere where he can help you and do something that the other guys can't? And then offensively, what they do with him. I think that's number one. Number two would be they just need to start winning some games here. They got through this tough road trip, and I think everyone was kind of easy on them. They're 2-4. We're not happy about the Portland game, but it's not, the season is falling. No one's doing that song and dance, but now I know there's some good teams coming up. You got to start winning some of these games because the Eastern Conference, again, you can be 4, and then in 3 or 4 games, you can be down to 7 or 8. And you mentioned right now, if the season were to end today, they'd be the 7 seed, and they would play Orlando, and Orlando has their number. I mean,
and again, that's a playing game.
Straight up, Orlando has their number. The other thing, and I know it's just 2 games, and by the way, I hate looking at if you go to ESPN.com, they always had the Laker game, which is there for the in-season tournament. That's always in the way when you look at their schedule. And I don't know, worry's not the word, but with this trade that they made, not having first-round picks, which everyone is good with, bleep the picks. Let's move on from the draft stuff. Let's go get ourselves a real player. And that was a lot of the rhetoric last week, KB, and I understood it. And to a certain extent, I agreed with it. But the 2 pieces then that mattered, kind of like the gamble wasn't getting rid of the first-round picks. The gamble was Jarris Walker, who, by the way, I think has proven, has he not? We can ask Carlisle this tomorrow, that, he's earned a part of this rotation, if you ask me. I mean, he is a confident player right now. Is he doing everything perfectly? No, he's not. He's a confident player, but it was also Benedict Mathurin. And I know you're the Mathurin guy. And the last 2 games, he hasn't done anything.
Oh, no, he's been awful.
I mean, he has 6 points in the last 2 games, only played 14 minutes in the Phoenix game, but kind of the point that you could move some of these assets was you wanted to keep the 2 crown jewels that would blossom. And obviously they're at different parts of their career, but part of that is Benedict Mathurin. If you're thinking about, moving a guy like Buddy Hield, I know defensively is good. He played a bunch of minutes at 18 points the other night. So if you're not going to have him as part of the lineup, then Benedict Mathurin can't have these no-shows. And to me, I won't say it's worrisome, but the first 2 games that Siakam is here are the first 2 games that Benedict Mathurin completely vanishes.
And he was so good Thursday night against the Kings.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Again,
we walked in here on Friday, you beat the Kings, and Matherin had the 25 points, and you're feeling really good about things, and then you lost that over the weekend. But Matherin needs to be more consistent. Now it's time to grow up. They're relying on him. He matters to their organization. That they've done everything. They have said we will get rid of future assets because we want to keep this guy. And then Siakam comes in, and Benedict Matherin has 6 points in 2 games.
Yeah, I do think organizationally they've struggled to find what is the consistent usage for him, though. Like, they've jumbled him, starting lineup, bench unit. Now, in general, they've had to jumble starting lineups here as of late. I couldn't believe, and Chris Denari said this last night, 10th straight different starting lineup. When we have Rick on tomorrow, that's a question I want to ask him. Like, how many times in his career? I think he's got a 10-game stretch and 10 different starting lineups throughout that. I would say if there is certainly a positive from last night, you would point to the 2 rookies. Think about Jarris Walker, Andy. That dude guns. I mean, he's
a confident player.
Yeah, that comes with confidence is probably more of a politically correct statement. When you hear gun, it's like a little bit of a negative connotation with it. But yeah, he is much more of an aggressive, confident offensive player, particularly in taking jump shots, than I thought he would be. You like the rebound total from last night from him as well. I still think defensively, he's got to kind of fine-tune some stuff. And I know it won't jump off the page, but in watching last night, I do like how Ben Sheppard plays the game. I think Sheppard is a really heady player. I think he makes the right play. And I bring that up because if and when they do move Buddy Hield, you would think Sheppard would be one that would get some minutes off of that. So I am kind of curious to continue to keep an eye on that. I do want to go back to something we talked about earlier in the show in regards to Haliburton. And I hope this doesn't come off as like conspiracy theorist, but I found it a bit interesting or odd even that he made his return Friday against Portland. If you remember the injury he suffered, I guess it would have been 2 weeks ago today, right? 2 weeks ago on a Monday night, national title game, same night. He gets hurt. The early report is on that Tuesday MRI is he is going to be reevaluated in approximately 2 weeks. So that would be tomorrow. But yet he made his return, about a week and a half into his process.
And by the way, we felt good last Wednesday when we spoke with Carlisle. We left that conversation feeling that Haliburton was going to be back sooner than all of us thought, right? That's a fair assumption.
Right. And again, hamstrings are tricky. They are, any sort of muscle like that, it can be a very finicky situation. I mean, hell, look at Jelani Woods for the Colts this past year. A hamstring injury seemingly caused him to miss the entire season. And then you see Haliburton play on Friday night, and he was brilliant in the game. But I think, again, anybody that watched that game, you still saw some favoring, laboring maybe. You definitely did not see him like totally 1,000%. Andy, they don't have a back-to-back. They play then on Sunday, and he's out. He's out due to injury management. Now, Carlisle made it clear there's no re-injury, there's no setback. But I just bring that up to say, all right, are we dealing with any sort of, back-to-back management with him now? I mean, the Pacers have a big back-to-back Thursday, Friday. They've got Philly Thursday, they've got Phoenix Friday. Will you play him in both those games? You sat him when it wasn't a back-to-back last night, so I am interested to see that. I believe they have another back-to-back before the All-Star break comes up in a few weeks as well.
Yeah, they do February 1st and 2nd. They play at New York and then back home to Sacramento.
So that's next week. So you got 2 back-to-backs within kind of a week and a half here. He obviously wants to play in the All-Star game, so it's not like the All-Star weekend will be total rest for him. And again, I bring up that All-NBA threshold and how much money he can make. Right now, Andy, I believe he's missed 9 games this season. He can miss up to 8 more and still play the 65-game mark, which would earn him that All-NBA consideration and the money that comes with that, which is like a $260 million deal if he were to make that. There's got to be a human element to that he wants to play. and sure, I think he wants to play, period, but there's a lot of financial stake with that as well. So it's not probably the dominant storyline exiting last night, but I do think it's something just to keep an eye on because he's so damn valuable for you. And yes, having Siakam, I think, helps you in withstanding his loss, and the Pacers have been a much better team this year without him than they were last year. but still, you'd be naive to just overlook that. So I do think that's another part of last night to keep an eye on.
Let me ask you this. Is it you want to see how he looks on Tuesday? You want to see, is he playing, and is he favoring anything on Tuesday? Or is it the conversation of back-to-backs that you're worried about? Like, do we think he's playing on Tuesday? I guess
sure.
that's where we would start. Do we think he's out there?
I would say yes.
I would too.
Based off Carlisle's comments last night. But, Andy, I'm not trying to put like the fan hat on and say, oh, first home game in multiple weeks. Siakam and Haliburton back at home defending champs. What an environment. What a fun Tuesday night. Haliburton, let's go. Like, I say it more from he is so freaking important to your operation that you don't want this to become nagging. You don't want this to become lingering, anything like that. And I guess I was just kind of caught off guard when all of a sudden Carlisle last night, 90 minutes before tips, like, yeah, Tyrese isn't going to play.
I did too. It's deflating to the game, yeah.
Injury management, et cetera, et cetera. It has less to do with, sure, I'd love to see him and Siakam together, and it's important for, obviously, those two to be on the floor together. And Friday night, it looked great for long stretches with them together. But more so, you're in the second half of the season. You really have little to no breaks the rest of the way. The All-Star break's not going to be a real break for him as well. You've got a tough close out to January. And the standings, I feel like we've maybe lost sight of a little bit. But when you made this trade, Andy, you all of a sudden, and again, I'm a guy that thought 5 or 6 seed, you need to be super competitive in round 1. I think if you exited this season with that, it would be kind of a successful on-court win-loss sort of standpoint to the season. When you make the trade for Siakam, you give up the picks, you're, in all likelihood going to pay him the amount of money that you're paying him, you now sped up the clock into needing to get results, wanting to get those results. And right now, you are a play-in team. Now, it's very jumbled. Things can turn in a hurry. But I think I get that when you make a trade, there's a little bit of a, growing period, acclimation period, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't have a lot of time for that to play out when you look at the Eastern Conference and look at these standings right now.
Well, you also don't have a lot of time if Haliburton's not going to be out there in all of these games. If they're going to be more maintenance games.
And I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but
it could happen.
Does happen.
It could happen.
Yeah. And again, like, obviously, and Skivvy's tweeted this at me, how the Clippers are 0-6 to start with Harden. Most teams do go through, growing pains. I know the Knicks necessarily haven't done that with Anunoby. I don't think, though, offensively, he really clogs things up too much. It's not like he demands the ball, even as much as Siakam probably needs the ball. But I just think these are a couple of it's an interesting time for the Pacers in that they got to settle on a starting lineup. They've got to get healthy. Now the rookies are starting to play all of a sudden, and it's like, wait, are they now consistent guys in the rotation? You're 2.5 weeks away from the trade deadline. Jarris Walker got in before Obi Toppin last night. Do we read anything into that trade deadline-wise? Where are you at with Buddy Hield in that expiring deal? You've just got to get, Siakam acclimated. Obviously, Haliburton's injury. It is a
they have a lot of things up in the air right now.
There's a lot of checklist items
right.
that you just got to get figured out. And amidst all of that, if you purely only care about just tell me if they've won or lost, well, that really matters because the standings are super jumbled right now.
Are you a checklist guy? Are you a list guy? You write out the list and you guys scratch things off the list, or are you not a list guy?
I am a big organizational human.
That's what I figured.
I would do the I got one of those like Notre Dame sticky pads.
Oh, I'm sure you do. We need to do a show checklist, things we need. That's what we need.
And that would be my grocery list. And Maddie's like, I sent it to you in your notes app. Will you just open that up? And I'm like, no, I like to cross things off I don't need to whip my phone out every time.
Kevin's guy that always has like a pen behind his ear, so he's just like ready to jot things down.
Got a pen, got a note, put Max Bowen in that. I've told you before, sometimes, give him the banana to keep him entertained as we go up and down every aisle. He loves when you really push the cart a little faster.
Every kid does.
A little dangerous.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, my daughter's like, go faster. We're in Costco. I'm like, I'm going to take someone's knee out.
Well, I'm also like, have you seen these wheels? I mean,
they might fall off.
Yeah.
You got to get the carts where they have like the cars attached to them.
I know.
But that's what you need.
But the turning radius with that thing, Mark, oh my gosh.
Oh, I've bashed my shins a few times.
Well, and then you just run into people.
Yeah.
People are avoiding you like the plague.
Sorry, ma'am.
It's like whoever's in car 33 at the 500 of like, don't get near that car whatsoever.
Oh, that's fantastic. 2 other stories before we get to a morning check down that I want to hit on that just quickly because they're not full segment stories, but we talked about them off air and they're pretty funny. So did you see over the weekend that for the first time in 45 years, Pitt basketball went into Duke and won the game. Did you see that? I'm sure you probably did. What you also probably saw was Pitt forward, now he's a senior, Blake Hinson. Did you guys see this? He got up on the scorer's table at Cameron Indoor, and all the Duke fans, all the Cameron Crazies, all the faithful there were giving him the double birds when he was up on the...
that was a great picture.
The old Bud Adams, as I like to call it.
That was a great picture.
The old Bud Adams. So that was great. I love people say there's going to be a lot of people being called into the principal's office there at Duke.
Still coached by Capel?
Yes, it is.
Is he bitter that he doesn't have that job? I mean, he's been awful at Pittsburgh, but
he has been awful at Pittsburgh. I would say he's probably a little bit bitter. Wouldn't you be bitter?
Sure.
Yeah, I want to say he's bitter. But if you remember a few years ago when Pitt came in there, remember the Cameron Crazies booed Capel? And remember Coach K losing his mind and going over to the Cameron Crazies and scolding them? Remember that? And then
the lecturing by Coach K. Remember when he lectured? Was it Dylan Brooks?
It was Dylan
lectured
Brooks.
in the handshake line.
It was Dylan Brooks, and everyone crushed Coach K. But now, knowing what we know about Dylan Brooks, do you feel differently about that one at all?
I was so sick and tired of Coach K acting like he was everybody's dad.
And having like a 20-month retirement tour.
Oh
it's so true.
Thank you,
so
Coach
true.
Saban, for how he handled it.
So anyway, that was one story. And then the second story yesterday, this is when I was like, God bless, we need this football game to start, was Ohio State women's basketball beat Caitlin Clark and Iowa.
Oh, is this the court storm?
And they stormed the court, and Caitlin Clark, if you haven't seen the video, was running off the court, and she collided with a fan. And that started the conversation. Again, this was about an hour before. I was like, the football game's got to start here, okay? I even went to NFL pregame because of this. The conversation on Twitter X then turned to court storming etiquette.
My favorite topic.
Should we court storm? It went back to Matt Painter's conversation. Who did they lose to? Nebraska?
That was the Nebraska game,
After
right?
the Nebraska game, how 3 years of players have had the court stormed every single time they've lost a game on the road in the Big Ten. And it went to that. It went to, did Caitlin Clark, you need to see the video. Did she embellish? Did she flop? Why did she have her head down? Why did the individual she ran into, why were they not paying attention? Thank God the NFL started at 3 o'clock. For a solid hour, that's what we had on social media yesterday.
Like it was turning into like JFK's Zapruder film, like back and to the right, back and to the
and
right.
Then I feel like later in the night that we went, we got multiple angles.
We
and
did.
Now they're saying, should Caitlin Clark have avoided?
Mm-hmm. She flailed her arms.
It was another girl that she hit, right?
Yes. And they collided pretty good.
It was a hit.
It was
now,
a good
it seems
collision.
like Caitlin Clark was fine, thankfully. My opinion on court storming will never change. I believe fans should storm after every win. But I feel like we got to get all on board from a security standpoint.
Yeah, well, basically that's what Matt Painter said. And that is what Matt Painter said.
Like, again, this is not something that obviously happens every night. But if you're playing Purdue or if you're playing Caitlin Clark, the pregame meeting of, okay, we have a dozen security people. And honestly, I almost think coaches, and I know you can't do this for every game, but I almost feel like coaches should play the timeout game with like a second or two to go and just be like, all right, can we get half of our team off the floor into the locker room? Then the security can now concentrate on the 5 players that need to be on the floor to inbound the ball or whatever. And then simply get the rope up, get one security member for each player, and escort them off the floor in a seemingly orderly fashion here.
That makes more sense than the pregame. You can't be have loser talk at pregame. Well, when we lose to Caitlin Clark, let's get everybody out of there. I think you do the timeout thing.
So today was Ohio State, or it was
Ohio State.
Okay, so if you are Ohio State pregame, your event staff and your security until you gather them in a room and say, hey, if we win,
I thought you meant
we're going to have to do
the
this.
coaching staff.
And then if you're Ohio State's coaching staff, and you have the lead late and whatever, it's an 8-point lead with 4 seconds to go, you'd say, because that's what happened.
Because that's what it was
with Purdue and Northwestern earlier this year. Chris Collins and Matt Painter got together and said, all right, let's take a timeout, get some of our guys off the floor here. Because, again, selfishly, I love those moments. And I get it from a safety standpoint. It's probably not the safest thing in the world. I mean, hell, it gets a little claustrophobic. I remember from the one time I did storm, I was thinking to myself, boy, this is all of a sudden got really hot and bothered in here very quickly.
Your shirt off, weren't you?
Well, needed it, honestly. But it's such
Shedding
a great
layers.
moment for these college students and the programs and the fan bases. They should be able to have them, and let's do it in an orderly fashion.
Now, also, Tulane beat Memphis. I don't know if you saw this.
I didn't realize Memphis was so good.
Well, I mean, yeah, they've lost a couple games now. Yeah, they're going to fall out of the top 25. But regardless, they're a fine team. A Tulane student pushed a Memphis player. And then he kind of ran it it was kind of like the Carmelo. Remember when Carmelo did the punch and then he ran? So you see a student push a Tulane player, and then this individual just kind of disappears, evaporates into the mass of humanity. But I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'd push a Memphis basketball.
I got Malice at the Palace vibes when that happened. I'm like, that could go south real quick.
I was like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do.
You've got to make sure that you're, and I don't know, maybe it's too unfair to put that much pressure on the security team, but you got to make sure each person has one player.
And then last thing on this, because this is what my feed is. It immediately turned into, because the Caitlin Clark video showed her being injured and, colliding and everything else, it then turned into, and I'm sorry, Indiana fans, because I follow a bunch of Kentucky people still, it turned into, remember when Darius Miller was almost trampled during the watch shot?
Right, and that one was, by the way, that was a great headline in the Indiana Daily Student that Monday. Trampling number 1, I believe, was the exact headline, and Darius Miller's in the fetal position. That's one that's almost out of your control because that was a game-winning shot.
Oh, that was organically awesome.
Right, and not obviously all court stormings happen at the buzzer.
Well, they're all not created the same.
Now, what happened with Kentucky this weekend? They've got the next Dirk Nowitzki. Is that what I'm saying here?
Listen, I'm not.
Or is he better than Dirk?
Kentucky's loaded, man. This is one of those. They don't have any. They got this guy named Big Z. We talked about it on Friday. Zvadimir Ivisic. I don't know how you say it. It's something like that.
He's legitimately what, 7'2"?
Oh, he's 7'2". And I remember someone close to Kentucky, I remember talking with them. They're like, I have no idea how we're going to get him eligible because, he played professionally. He played against grown men overseas. And so, the Kentucky fans last week they spent, several thousands of dollars. They put up that billboard over off by the NCAA headquarters. I don't know if it was I can't remember. I went by it this weekend. It's by Gugman House Brewery. That's the reason I know, because we went there. And so it's kind of by the NCAA. And so, word came out that on Saturday he was going to be available against poor whoever's at Georgia. I forget the name of the coaches at Georgia now. But Mike White, that's who is at Georgia. I called him mid-major Mike once.
Should have held on to Tom Crean.
To Mike DeCourcy. He got very mad at me over that. He scolded me on that. But, poor Georgia. And this kid came in and in 13, 14 minutes, buried 5 shots, had a behind-the-back pass, had a couple blocks, had a dunk. He
people are
he looked fantastic. Oh, yeah.
Kentucky's now the favorite.
I don't know if they're the favorite, but, they're going to enter this season. I told young Corbin Bornop when he was in, remember what I told him the first time he was in? To go buy tickets to the Indianapolis pod here for the NCAA tournament.
Get Purdue and Kentucky in the pod.
Because you'll get Purdue and Kentucky in the pod, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Remind Purdue fans, or I guess any fans out there, that doesn't mean they're going to be playing each other.
Agreed.
They could be in 2 totally different brackets. And honestly, in all likelihood, if Kentucky starts to get hot and continue their better play here as of late, they'll probably be a 1 seed.
I think Kentucky will end up being at least a 2 or a 3. I don't know about a 1, but I could see them be a 2, and obviously Purdue's going to be the overall number 1 seed unless something happens. Zach Edey gets injured, they go on a losing streak, but that's something they haven't done in 3 seasons.
Pop quiz coming up in a few. 317-239-1070 for that. Let's do a morning check.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, 117-110, that's your final last night in Phoenix. The Suns over the Pacers. The Pacers now fall to 24-19 on the season, 2-4 in that 6-game road trip. Obviously, we've talked a lot about it. That Friday game against Portland, that's the one that stings. But last night, 7-point loss, pulled close, couldn't get it done in the end. Pascal Siakam, 2 games under his belt as an Indiana Pacer. Here's what Rick Carlisle thought of his new forward postgame.
He's a very resourceful, adaptable player. I can see that we'll be able to put him on a lot of different guys, a lot of different positions. He started on Booker in this game, ended up moving to Durant and to other guys. Offensively, we've got to get him more acquainted with some of the stuff we're doing, and we're going to have to add some new stuff that's, makes sense for his special abilities. Studying that stuff now, but there's everything to like about him, really.
Honestly, it's one of the better home weeks of the season when you look at the schedule upcoming for the Pacers. They will return home tomorrow, defending champs in the Nuggets here, the Sixers on Thursday, and then the Suns on Friday. It'll also be Memphis on Sunday. Again, John Morant out for the year, of course. But, you think about a Western Conference, and honestly, Memphis still has some local ties that I know a lot of people will enjoy as well. It's the one trip you're going to get from Denver, the one trip you get from Phoenix, and same thing with Memphis. So, a very important week, and honestly, pretty entertaining week when you look at the opponents upcoming for the Pacers. All right, going back to last weekend and college basketball, I guess let's go in chronological order. Friday night from Madison, it went about how every other game goes in Madison for the Indiana Hoosiers. 91-79 was the final score. It was a pretty awful first half for Indiana. They made a couple of somewhat competitive runs, but nothing of serious note. They did play without Cleo Ware. Ankle injury for him. No game for Indiana this week. It'll be at Illinois coming up on Saturday. Easily their toughest stretch of the Big Ten season. And C.J. Gunn got ejected in the stat then that brought going around. Indiana leads college basketball in flagrant fouls. So we'll see if any sort of celebration on that as the season unfolds. You could maybe go banner on senior day for that.
Didn't someone send us? Oh, here it is. They have 7 total.
Don't they lead by 2?
Yeah, they lead. Thank you to Jeremy who sent this. They have 5 flagrant 1s, 2 flagrant 2s, so they have 7 total. The Arkansas and Florida A&M both have 5. They're tied for second, and then you have a tie for fourth. Iowa State, Lehigh, New Mexico State, and Utah Tech all have 4. Again, that'd be Utah Tech with 4.
Can't hit foul shots, but can hit the other opponent in the nuts, right? Something
Putting
along
up
those
Wilt
lines.
Chamberlain numbers right now.
Did C.J. Gunn did the elbow?
Yeah,
was that a little embellished by the Iowa player?
I would say a lot by the Wisconsin kid, yeah. And he kind of nuzzled into him before, but you know what they say about catching the second person there. So 91-79, Indiana loses. Purdue 84-70 over Iowa. So to recap last week for Purdue, both road wins by 21 and 14 points. That is damn impressive by the Boilermakers. Zach Edey's last 3 games, 93 points, 54 rebounds.
Not too bad.
It is just utterly insane what Zach Edey continues to do. Obviously 31 and 18 if you want to average that out there for the Boilers. And then Butler over DePaul, 74-60. Big run to end the first half there. Much needed for Butler. Both Butler and Purdue in action tomorrow. Very different start times. Purdue at Georgetown at 6:30. Again, that's a game they just need to take care of business against a bad Georgetown team. And Purdue has got Michigan. That is in Mackey. That is 9 o'clock on Peacock here. So the only games for Purdue, Butler, or Indiana here this week come tomorrow night before all of them will be in action coming up Saturday and Sunday.
It's a slow week. It's a
slower
busy
week. Pacers week.
It's not for Pacers, but for college basketball it is. NFL is set coming up on Sunday, championship weekend. Chiefs at Ravens, Lions at Niners. Chiefs and Ravens at 3 o'clock. Lions, Niners at 6:30. Currently Baltimore 3.5-point favorite. That one with an over-under at 44.5. And San Francisco a 6.5-point favorite with the over-under there at 50.5. Tentatively, I think I like the Lions plus the number and maybe the under there in that NFC game. Maybe the under.
Well, Deebo Samuel injury watch. Again, that will be a big one here as we get to the weekend. Shout out to Derek Barnes, former Purdue linebacker. He had the game-clinching interception for Detroit yesterday. And that one, first career INT for the former fourth-round pick there. And the IU women, they win in Mackey. That is 10 in a row for Terry Morin's bunch. She continues her extremely impressive run there in Bloomington. Without Sydney Parrish, one of their better players, Indiana hits 15 threes, and they beat the Boilers 74-68. All right, it's time for a pop quiz, 317-239-1070. We'll pop quiz it up next.
With Wendy's breakfast, 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles.
the pressure. Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
All right, pop quiz time on this Monday. Scotty's in here. He's got his Johnny Morton jersey on. You like that? Old 87?
How about, so Craig Reynolds, the guy who scored there on that 4th and goal, number 13. I mean, does that not just sound like the number 3 pitcher for every Major League Baseball team?
It does. Craig Reynolds also ruined everybody's parlay yesterday by by not being Jamar Gibbs or David Montgomery to score that touchdown.
I do love that, Scotty, on the
Johnny
Lions.
Morton jersey.
Yeah, the Johnny Morton jersey.
Oh, it's great, man. It's got the like the Velcro on the sleeves and everything. I mean, that's an old school jersey. At first, I thought, is that Herman Moore or is that Johnny Morton? Johnny Morton. So there you go.
The Lions, they got a lot of skill talent. I mean, they've invested a lot with where they've drafted these guys, but I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs and the Montgomery move was a great move. Clearly, it's kind of a little bit of a thunder and lightning there, and then their wideouts and Sam Laporta. That is a nice skill group around Jared Goff.
Well, the beauty is, they were already a good team, but they went in the draft and they drafted a tight end high and they drafted Gibbs 12th overall.
Yeah, people
everyone yelled and
Brown
screamed.
being a 4th-round pick.
Well, I'm saying everyone yelled and screamed, you don't take a running back 12th and a tight end and all that, and those two guys have kind of put him over the hump to a certain extent. Laporta's been fantastic.
I remember when Notre Dame played USC, and this would have been like a handful of years ago, but St. Brown and Michael Pittman were their top 2, wideouts.
Exactly.
And Notre Dame was under the impression there of we need to do everything we can to try and take away Pittman Jr. And then, we'll let St. Brown get his. And he did. And,
St. Brown's great, man. He's good.
Yeah, he is a very, very good
And Goff, and listen, Goff's good, man. And Goff has after next year, he's a free agent. So after the 2024 season, he's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, I just bring it up because he's getting paid a little over $20 million a year. But, Goff's, 60 minutes away from being to his 2nd Super Bowl. I think they're going to beat the Niners.
Former number 1 pick in Mr. Goff versus Mr. Irrelevant in Brock Purdy. And that's Goff going back to his Bay Area, right? He's a Cal guy, isn't he?
Scotty put this up on the board. Craig Reynolds was an all-star shortstop for the Astros and the Mariners. So there you go. So, no, he doesn't sound like the third pitcher. He sounds like a shortstop.
Reynolds. I mean, just combine it all here from a baseball standpoint. Mark Dykton, give us let's go number 2 here for the pop quiz.
Randy.
Hey, Randy.
Hello. How are you doing?
Randy, how's your weekend?
Oh, not too bad.
You doing anything fun?
Oh, just watch football and cleaned up the house.
Do you hate the Lions like Andy?
Mm-hmm.
No, not especially. I mean, I kind of relate this to what the Cubs did in 2016 a little bit.
Yes, Randy, yes.
Well, I mean, that's true. It is. By the way, me and Randy had apparently the same weekends. Watch football and clean the house. It's exactly what I did. Me and Randy did the exact same weekend.
I am all in on the Lions right now, but let's not compare their suffering to the Cubs, right?
I don't know. It's on par. I mean, not as long, but it's still,
still
pretty embarrassing.
They've had a century, weren't they?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that one fan that they keep on showing at all the games, and Peyton talked to him on the sidelines before, maybe he would like a word with me, but...
Oh, the guy who's 80 years old or whatever?
Yeah.
Scotty said 165. Yeah, it's a little
slightly different.
Couple decades difference, but that's okay.
Just a couple.
I still relate.
Randy, thank you for calling in. Andy Sweeney will toss number 1 your way.
Yeah, I will. I would also say Lions fans are more likable than Cubs fans. Sorry, Mark. I would say that's probably pretty unanimous. All right.
That's Randy, the Giants fan.
They're not likable at all. Let's get question number 1. Let's get it right here. Let's get going. The Pacers lost to the Suns last night in Phoenix. Kevin Durant led the Suns with 40 points. Who led the Pacers, though, in scoring last night? Was it Pascal Siakam, Buddy Hield, Jalen Smith, Miles Turner?
We'll go with Siakam.
I think this guy scored a lot, and he also maybe gave up the amount that he scored as well. Who'd you say, Randy?
I said Siakam.
We'll try again. Giving you a little grace on a Monday.
Jalen Smith.
Jalen Smith was really good against his former team last night. Number 2 here, the conference championship matchups are set in the NFL playoffs. 29 of the 30 NFL teams have reached the conference championship game in their franchise history. Name the only current NFL franchise that has never reached their conference championship game. Is it the Jets, the Chargers, the Jags, or the Texans?
Texans. No,
That's a good job.
Yeah,
All
say
right,
no more. Move on.
Question number 3. The Lions are in the NFC Championship game. Randy, for the first time since the 1991 season, ending a 32-year drought in reaching the conference championship game. Believe it or not, the Lions were tied for the second longest active drought before Saturday's win. Name the team that is now not made it to their conference championship game over the past 34 years. Cowboys, Dolphins, Browns, Commanders.
I would say.
Don't overthink it, Randy.
Let's go the Browns.
Number 4 here on this day in 1989, Bill Walsh retired as head coach of the 49ers after beating the Bengals in Super Bowl 23. Who was the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals in Super Bowl 23? Is it Forrest Gregg, Sam Wyche, Bruce Coslett, or Paul Brown?
We'll go with Wyche.
Now, Scotty, you'll have to help me here. What player got in trouble for the Bengals and Wyche benched him during that game? Was it Wilson? Okay, that's what I thought. That was a big deal. It's a big deal, Sam Wyche. All right, question number 5. On this day in 1968, the NBA announced that expansion franchises would be awarded to 2 cities. One was given to last night's Pacers opponent, the Phoenix Suns. Name the other franchise that was born on January 22nd, 1968. Milwaukee Bucks, Seattle Supersonics, Cleveland Cavaliers, Buffalo Braves.
I'm going with the Bucks.
How about this effort here?
Boy, did Randy get 4 out of 5?
How about
Or did he get 3 out of 5?
Here.
It's a good start to the week.
Randy, number 2, you got right. The Houston Texans.
Let's go!
Never reached conference championship game. Only team in the NFL. He got 3 right. The Browns. Sam Wyche, indeed. Coach of the Bengals.
Man, that hurts me. He got number 5 right, the Milwaukee Bucks. The only one he got wrong was number 1, who led the Pacers last night in scoring. It was Buddy Hield. He said Jalen Smith.
He said Siakam at first.
I feel like we should have helped him out a little bit more. Usually, especially you, help these guys out on question 1.
Jalen Smith was very good early in that game. I had kind of forgotten until Daenerys said it that he was a former Sun. He had one play, Andy. He was hitting a bunch of threes, but then he had one play where like him and Durant got isolated. Next thing you know, he like dribbles back and takes a step back right in Durant's face and hits it. I'm like, whoa. That was a big moment, but just some odd, and I'm not saying this by any means to like rip Rick Carlisle. I understood the thinking there, but it was interesting late in the game how it wasn't Miles Turner, it wasn't Jalen Smith. It was really Pascal Siakam, playing as that center, and the Pacers went small around him to try and guard Phoenix to no avail, as the Pacers did have a 1-point lead at one point, but Phoenix made all the plays down the stretch and got that win. All right, thank you to Randy for the call. We'll do it one final time here. It is the wake-up call with KB and Andy.
Tavern Tour 24.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, fun show today, reacting to everything over the weekend. Everything is set in the NFL. It's going to be a busy week for the Pacers, obviously. We'll be mock drafts coming out on the NFL. I know KB has a story up right now at 1075thefan.com. You know, I asked this, and this is something that we can talk more about tomorrow. But I do wonder this, and I wonder out loud, you know, we have had the conversation, KB, about what kind of wide receiver could be out there, right? Like, it's not easy to just go find a free agent wide receiver. And, you know, sometimes there's a guy who's unhappy on their current team, or a team might move on. And I bring this guy up. I want you to think about this, and maybe tomorrow we dive into it. You know, is Stefon Diggs a guy that would be interesting at all to this area? The only reason I bring it up is, listen, he's getting a little bit older. Next year, he'll be 31. He'll be making about...
God, is he that old?
Yeah, he'll be making about 18, 19 mil. Now, he's not an unrestricted free agent until 2028, but there is an out after 2025. So he would get paid next year 18.5, 18 in 2025, and then there would be an out in that contract. The only reason I bring it up, and he is a fine player, is, you know, his numbers this year are not bad at all. I mean, I may say, well, he's not doing this or that. His target number is still kind of high, but I mean, I feel like they forgot about him in the offense in a lot of ways, and I don't know what they feel like they need to do there. I mean, if you just go look, I mean, you know, last night he had 21 yards. Pittsburgh, he had 52. The last time he went over 100 yards was he had 10 catches for 100 yards going all the way back to October 15th against the Giants in that 14-9. What was that, Marc? It was a Monday or a Sunday night game, because I remember Marc complaining how bad the game was. It was a Monday or a Sunday night game. It was one of them. It was Sunday night. That's what it was. I don't know. I just bring him up because he's not happy there. He is a little bit older, but he is a stud still. I mean, even in a year where I'm saying he's not very good, he had 117 catches, nearly 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, average 11.1 per reception. I would just throw that name out there of a disenfranchised guy. Maybe they feel like they need to move on. And I wouldn't give up too much for him, but I would just throw that out there. It's a dream. It'll never happen.
What about a free agent who lost yesterday despite being very good, and that would be Mike Evans?
You know I love Mike Evans. Listen, I've said it. Mike Evans is one of my favorite players in the entire league. He is an absolute beast. Absolute beast.
Yeah, you know, the Diggs thing, there was a play Romo diagram there late in the game where I think Allen sat on it through to Shakir in the end zone, tried to hit the home run there, and he had Diggs on
was
the
open.
on
underneath
the crosser there that would have gone for, I think, decent yardage there. Yeah, he has been quiet. As someone that's had him on his fantasy team, I can speak to that later in the season. He had a great start to the year, but definitely quiet later in the year. I think the Gabe Davis injury was really big for them. You know, Buffalo was banged up, and I think that was kind of the storyline really throughout the week. And someone asked me yesterday, hey, Bills or Chiefs? I go, well, my head says Chiefs, my heart says Bills. It's just I thought Buffalo was too banged up, and I think you saw some of that, particularly at wideout in those key areas. Again, they just fall so much into the trap of, like, their best play is Josh Allen running. And that's just a tough game to play for 4 quarters throughout there. But, you know, those wideout names, Andy, we ran off the stats late in the year. You look at the top 15 wideouts in the league, everybody is either drafted by that team or traded. You know, you don't find a lot of free agents that move teams. We'll see if a guy like Mike Evans could be that for some team here coming up this offseason. All right, thank you to Gregg Doyel. We had him on earlier. That'll be up on the podcast as well. Hoping for Rick Carlisle tomorrow as the Pacers will begin now a 4-game homestand starting tomorrow night. Again, it's the Denver Nuggets in town. Sixers on Thursday, Suns on Friday, and then they'll round it out with Memphis coming up as we start to inch closer to the NBA All-Star Game and the NFL Combine as well. Busy time here in the Circle City. Everybody have a great Monday. Thank you for spending it with us. Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, Marc Dykton signing off. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Query and